The Alpha's fist connected with her jaw before she could even speak. Alara hit the ground hard, tasting copper and dirt. Above her, Kyle Draven stood with that woman, Celine, wrapped around his arm like a victory banner. The pack circled them in the torchlight, faces carved from stone in silence. "Traitor," he said. Just one word. Cold as the frontier winter. She'd given him everything, 10 years of loyalty, her youth, her dreams, and now this. But here's the thing about breaking someone who's already survived being orphaned in wolf territory. Sometimes they don't shatter. Sometimes they just stop caring. Stick around to see how the outcast becomes the legend. Like this video if you're watching from your city, and drop a comment below telling us where you're from. The thing nobody tells you about being indispensable is that it makes you invisible. Alara learned this at 14, the day Alpha Draven Sr. pulled her from the orphan barracks and assigned her to his son's service. "You'll support Kyle," he'd said, like it was prophecy instead of orders. "He'll need someone sharp, someone loyal." She'd nodded, skinny and desperate and stupid with hope. That was 12 years ago. Now, at 26, Alara Vance could navigate Iron Ridge Pack's tangled logistics with her eyes closed. She knew which border patrols ran late, which supply routes needed reinforcement, which pack members nursed grudges that might explode into violence if left unattended. She tracked everything in ledgers she kept in the administrative cabin. A glorified shed, really, tucked behind the Alpha's lodge like an afterthought. Iron Ridge wasn't a gentle place. The territory stretched across brutal frontier land where winter came early and stayed late, where neighboring packs tested boundaries with teeth and claws, where one bad harvest could mean starvation. The pack survived because someone made sure it did. That someone was usually Alara. "You're sending Marcus's unit to the North Pass?" Kale's voice cut through her concentration. She looked up from the patrol schedule. He stood in the doorway of her cabin, backlit by late afternoon sun, all broad shoulders and sharp angles. Even scowling, Kyle Draven was beautiful in that cruel, untouchable way that made people forget to breathe. Alara had stopped forgetting years ago. "The North Pass needs coverage," she said evenly. "Marcus's team is due for rotation and they know that terrain. Marcus is an idiot. He'll miss signs of encroachment. Marcus follows orders and doesn't freelance, which is exactly what we need on a routine patrol." Kale's jaw tightened. "Don't contradict me." "I'm not contradicting. I'm explaining my reasoning." She kept her voice flat, professional, the tone that said, "I'm not fighting, I'm just right." It used to work better. "Change it," Kale said. "Send Garrett's unit." Alara bit back the argument that Garrett's team had just finished a double shift at the eastern border and needed rest. That running them into the ground would lead to mistakes, and mistakes in this territory led to body counts. "Of course," she said instead. "I'll adjust the schedule." Kale grunted and left without acknowledgement. She stared at the empty doorway for a long moment, then methodically rewrote the patrol assignments. Again. Marcus would be pissed. He'd been looking forward to the North Pass route. Garrett would comply, but his team would be sluggish, resentful. This was how it went lately. Kale issued contradictions, she smoothed them over, the pack functioned despite the friction. The arranged mating bond they'd been locked into 3 years ago by Alpha Draven Sr.'s deathbed command was supposed to have changed things. Alara had thought, stupidly, desperately, that maybe Kyle would finally see her, not as the useful orphan girl, not as the administrative workhorse, but as a partner. Instead, he'd looked at her like a chain. Still working? Alara glanced up to find Nina, one of the few pack members who bothered with casual conversation, leaning against the doorframe with a sympathetic expression. "Always," Alara said. "You should come to the gathering tonight. The hunters brought down an elk. There'll be food, fire, actual fun." Nina tilted her head. "Remember fun?" "Vaguely." "Kyle will be there." "I know." Alara returned her attention to the ledger. "Which is exactly why I'll stay here." Nina sighed. You can't avoid him forever. You're mated. The pack has made it very clear where I stand." Alara's voice came out sharper than intended. She softened it. "I'm not avoiding him. I'm just picking my battles." That was true enough. 3 years of cold shoulders and public dismissals had taught Alara when to push and when to vanish. Pack gatherings were particularly brutal. watching Kael charm everyone else while treating her like furniture, watching the way pack members took their cues from him, gradually shifting from polite to indifferent to occasionally hostile. She'd learned to stay busy instead, useful but unseen. "Suit yourself," Nina said, but her eyes held pity. Elara hated the pity more than the hostility. After Nina left, Elara worked until the sun dropped below the tree line and the cabin grew too dark for reading. She could hear the gathering starting up near the main lodge. Laughter, music, the smell of roasting meat drifting through the cold air. Her stomach growled. She ignored it and lit a lamp. The supply requisition forms needed reviewing. The winter store's inventory was overdue. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "It's open," she called, expecting Nina back with a plate of food and more well-meaning pestering. Instead, Celine Ashford stepped inside. Alara's spine went rigid. Celine was everything Elara wasn't, willowy and graceful, with silver blonde hair that caught light like moon water and a smile that promised secrets. She'd arrived in Iron Ridge 6 months ago, a diplomatic liaison from one of the southern packs, though nobody seemed clear on what exactly she was liaising about. What was clear, Kael couldn't take his eyes off her. "Elara," Selene said warmly, "still buried in paperwork?" "The pack doesn't run itself." "No, it certainly doesn't." Celine moved further into the cabin with that floating walk of hers, examining the cramped space with barely concealed amusement. "You work so hard. It's admirable, really." The word admirable landed like an insult. "Did you need something?" Elara asked. "Just wanted to check on you. You missed the gathering again." Celine's smile was all sympathy and concern, the kind that looked genuine unless you were paying attention to the eyes. "People are starting to talk. Let them talk. They're saying you're pulling away from the pack, that you think you're too good for community events now that you're mated to the Alpha." Alara's hand stilled on the papers. "I've never thought that." "Of course you haven't, but perception matters, doesn't it?" Celine perched on the edge of Alara's desk, close enough that Elara caught her scent. Jasmine and something sweeter, cloying. "Kael especially has been concerned." "Kael knows where to find me if he has concerns." "Does he, though?" "You're always locked away in here. It's almost like you're avoiding your own mate." Celine's voice dropped to something confidential. "People notice these things. They wonder if there's trouble in the bond, if maybe the arranged mating wasn't the right choice." There it was, the blade hidden in velvet. Elara met Celine's gaze directly. "The bond is fine. I'm glad to hear it. Though I have to say, if my mate ignored me the way Kael seems to ignore you," Celine trailed off delicately. "Well, I'd wonder if his attention had gone elsewhere." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Elara stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "Thank you for your concern, but I have work to finish." "Of course. Don't let me keep you." Celine glided toward the door, then paused. "Oh, one more thing. There was a discrepancy in the supply distribution last week. Some of the Eastern families claim they didn't receive their full rations." "That's not possible. I personally oversaw—" "I'm sure you did. But you know how chaotic things can get. Easy to lose track." Celine's smile was gentle, understanding. "I told them you'd look into it, fix any mistakes." "There were no mistakes." "Then you'll be able to prove that, won't you? Good night, Elara." She left in a whisper of skirts and false concern. Elara stood alone in the lamplight, hands clenched so tight her nails cut crescents into her palms. She knew exactly what Celine was doing, planting seeds of doubt, manufacturing problems where none existed, slowly building a case that Elara was incompetent. The worst part was it was working. She spent the next hour cross-referencing distribution records, confirming what she already knew. Every family had received exactly what they were allotted. No discrepancies, no errors. But by tomorrow, half the pack would have heard there was a problem with the rations. And they'd believe Celine's version because Celine was charming and approachable and everything an Alpha's companion should be. While Elara was just the orphan girl who lived in a shed and did paperwork. The gathering was breaking up by the time she finally left the cabin, exhausted and hollow. She took the long route back to the small quarters she'd been assigned after the mating bond. Separate from Kael's rooms in the main lodge, of course. He'd insisted on privacy. Space. Translation. He didn't want her anywhere near him. The path wound through dark trees, quiet except for wind and the distant sound of the river. Alara had walked it 1,000 times. So when she heard voices ahead, she almost didn't stop. Almost. Can't keep doing this. Kale's voice, low and rough with something that might have been anguish. I know. Celine's voice, soft and soothing. I know it's hard. Alara froze. They were just off the path in the small clearing near the old oak. She could see them through the trees, Kael with his back against the trunk, Celine standing close. Too close. She doesn't understand, Kael said. She thinks she can manage everything, control everything. She doesn't see how the pack feels. The pack needs strength, warmth. You give them that. Selena's hand came up to rest on Kael's chest. She gives them spreadsheets. Kael laughed, bitter and tired. My father thought she'd balance me, make me more strategic, more careful. Your father was thinking like an alpha, not like a man. No. Kael's voice dropped. He wasn't. Celine rose on her toes, and for one horrible moment, Alara thought she was going to kiss him. Instead, she just rested her forehead against his collarbone. You deserve someone who sees you, Celine whispered. Not just the title. Kael's arms came up, hesitated, then wrapped around her. Alara turned and walked away as quietly as she'd come. She didn't run, didn't cry, didn't make a sound. She just walked back to her empty quarters and sat on the bed in the dark, staring at nothing. The thing about breaking points is you never see them coming. You think you can take one more cut, one more dismissal, one more humiliation. You build up calluses and armor, and you tell yourself you're fine. Until suddenly, you're not. But Alara didn't break that night. She just started making a different kind of list. Over the next 3 weeks, things deteriorated with the precision of a controlled avalanche. First, the supply discrepancy Celine had mentioned became pack gospel. No matter how many times Alara proved the records were accurate, people believed there had been an error. She was too controlling, they said. Too rigid. Maybe she wasn't suited for logistics after all. Then Marcus's team missed signs of encroachment on their northern patrol, exactly as Alara had predicted, and a skirmish with the neighboring Thornback pack resulted in 2 injuries. Kael blamed Alara for the poor scheduling, even though he'd been the one to override her original assignments. She didn't bother defending herself. What was the point? Then the winter store's inventory came up short. Just by a little. Enough to cause concern. Not enough to be catastrophic. Alara knew she hadn't made an error, which meant someone had deliberately altered the counts. But nobody believed her. You're spread too thin, Kael told her in front of the senior pack members, his voice carrying that particular edge of disappointment that cut deeper than anger. Maybe it's time we redistributed some of your responsibilities. To who? Alara asked flatly. Celine has offered to assist with supply management. She has experience from her home pack. Of course she had. Fine, Alara said. Kael blinked, clearly expecting an argument. Fine. If you think that's best for the pack, I won't stand in the way. She saw confusion flicker across his face, then suspicion, then something that might have been guilt. But he nodded and dismissed her, and that was that. Alara handed over the supply logs to Celine with blank professionalism and refocused on the remaining territories of her shrinking domain: patrol coordination, conflict mediation, the 1,000 small fires that nobody else wanted to handle. She worked. She ate. She slept when exhaustion forced it. She spoke to Kael only when necessary, in the clipped formal tones of strangers conducting business. And she watched Celine slowly, carefully, poison every relationship Alara had tried to build. Watched pack members who'd once been cordial turn cold. Watched her contributions get erased or reassigned to others. Watched Kael and Celine grow closer with each passing day. Nina still tried, bless her. He's an idiot, Nina said bluntly one afternoon, finding Alara organizing patrol gear in the storage shed. And the pack is full of idiots for not seeing what she's doing. What is she doing? Alara asked, genuinely curious. Replacing you, slowly, so nobody notices until it's already done. Maybe that's for the best. Don't say that. Alara looked up from the rope she was coiling. Why not? I'm clearly not what Kael needs, not what the pack needs. That's bullshit, and you know it. You've held this pack together through 2 harsh winters and 3 border conflicts. Without you, they'll be fine, Alara said quietly. People are more adaptable than you think. Nina stared at her. What happened to you? Nothing, I'm just tired. That was true. Alara was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix, tired of fighting for respect she'd never received, tired of loving someone who looked through her like glass, tired of being the backbone nobody bothered to see until it broke. But she didn't break. She planned. Late at night, in her quarters, Alara started gathering things. Not much. She'd never had much to begin with. Some clothes. The few personal items she'd accumulated. A knife her mother had left her before she died. Maps. She studied the territory boundaries, the routes through unclaimed land, the locations of neighboring packs, particularly one pack, Moonfall, to the east. They were Iron Ridge's primary rivals, led by Alpha Ronan Vale. Alara had never met him, but she knew his reputation, ruthless, strategic, and notably fair to those under his protection. She wasn't stupid enough to think she'd be welcomed with open arms. Defecting to a rival pack was dangerous at best, suicidal at worst. But staying here was its own kind of death. The final straw came on a cold night in early winter. There was another gathering, this one celebrating the successful negotiation of a trade agreement with a southern pack. Kael had led the talks, with Celine at his side as advisor. Alara attended because absence would have been noticed, would have been used against her. She stood at the edges of the celebration, nursing a cup of honey wine she didn't taste, watching Kael laugh with Celine's hand resting casually on his arm. They make a good pair, don't they? Alara didn't turn. She recognized the voice. Thorn, one of the senior enforcers who'd never liked her. The trade agreement is favorable for Iron Ridge, she said neutrally. I wasn't talking about the agreement. Thorn moved into her peripheral vision, smirking. Face it, Vance. You were never going to be enough for him. Alpha's mate isn't a job you can earn through bookkeeping. Good thing I'm not trying to earn anything then. Could have fooled me. The way you trail after him, desperate for scraps of attention. I don't trail after anyone. No? Then why are you here, watching him with her, looking like a kicked dog? Alara turned to face Thorn fully, and something in her expression made him step back. I'm here, she said very quietly, because it's my pack. For now. She walked away before he could respond. She was heading toward the exit when she heard the scream. Everyone froze. Then chaos. A young mother burst into the gathering hall, wild-eyed and bleeding from a gash on her arm. The eastern border, Thornback Pack. They're raiding the outlying dens. The room erupted. Kael started shouting orders, organizing defensive teams. Alara's mind immediately went to logistics. Which families were at the eastern border? How many fighters they could mobilize? What routes the raiders would likely take? She was moving toward Kael to coordinate when Celine intercepted her. Let the fighters handle this, Celine said firmly. You'll just get in the way. I need to update Kael on the eastern family positions. I already did, before the gathering. Selena's smile was sharp. You're not the only one who pays attention, Alara. The dismissal was absolute. Alara stood there, useless, as the pack mobilized around her. Watched Kael lead the fighters out without a single glance in her direction. The remaining pack members huddled in the hall, tense and waiting. Alara slipped away. She went to the administrative cabin, pulled out her maps, and started cross-referencing positions. Celine might have updated Kael on family locations, but Alara knew the terrain better, knew the shortcuts, the weak points in their perimeter, Her blood went cold. The western border. If the eastern raid was a diversion, and Thornback was smart enough to coordinate, she was out the door and running before she'd fully completed the thought. The western border was lightly defended. Most of the fighters had been pulled east. If raiders came from that direction, the few remaining guards wouldn't hold. Alara ran through dark forest, her wolf senses sharpening her vision, speeding her steps. She could feel the mate bond pulling her back toward Kael in the east, but she ignored it. She reached the western perimeter just as she caught the scent of foreign wolves. There were 5 of them, Thornback raiders, moving quiet and fast toward a den sheltering 2 families. Alara didn't have backup, didn't have time to call for it. She had a knife and the element of surprise. She took down the first raider before he knew she was there. Fast, brutal, going for the throat because she wasn't strong enough to win any other way. The second one turned and she barely dodged his claws, felt fire across her ribs as they caught. She kept moving, kept fighting. By the time the third raider fell, she was bleeding from multiple wounds. The fourth caught her across the face and she went down hard. But the fifth one hesitated. She saw it in his eyes, the calculation. 3 of his pack dead, 1 injured, and this small, vicious female who fought like she had nothing to lose. He retreated. They both did. Alara lay in the dirt, gasping, bleeding, and completely alone. It took her 20 minutes to drag herself back to the den and verify the families were safe. Took another 10 to stumble back toward the pack center. She met the returning fighters halfway. Cale saw her and his eyes went wide. Alara, what happened? Western border, she managed. 5 raiders handled it. You... He moved toward her, but she stepped back, swaying. The families are safe. I need the healer. She walked past him, past all of them, leaving a trail of blood and silence. The healer patched her up with brisk efficiency, muttering about recklessness and stupidity. Alara sat still and quiet, letting her work. Cale appeared in the doorway. Out, the healer snapped. She needs rest. I need to talk to her. You can talk later. Out. He left, but Alara could feel him pacing outside. When the healer finally finished, she gave Alara a long look. You could have died. But I didn't. That's not the point. Where was your backup? Why were you out there alone? Alara didn't answer. The healer sighed and left, leaving the door open. Kyle came in immediately. That was reckless, he said. It was necessary. You could have been killed. Would you have cared? The words came out before Alara could stop them. Kyle went very still. What kind of question is that? An honest one. You're my mate. Of course I'm the mate you never wanted, the bond you call a chain. So I'm asking, would you actually care or would you just feel obligated? Cale's face hardened. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The pack expects... I know exactly what the pack expects. I've been managing those expectations for 12 years. You think managing logistics is the same as leadership? I think, Alara said quietly, that you wouldn't know leadership from cruelty if it bit you. His eyes flashed. Watch yourself. Or what? You'll ignore me harder? Dismiss me more publicly? She stood, ignoring the pain in her ribs. I saved those families tonight. I stopped a coordinated raid that would have killed pack members. And you're angry at me for being reckless. Because you acted alone. I'm always alone. The words ripped out of her. I've been alone since the day your father bound us, and you've made sure I stay that way. That's not... Go be with Celine, Alara said, exhausted. I'm sure she's very concerned. Kael's jaw clenched. You're injured and emotional. We'll talk when you're rational. He left. Alara stood in the empty healer's cabin, feeling the adrenaline drain away and leave behind something cold and crystalline. Clarity. She'd saved those families, and nobody would care. Or worse, they'd find a way to make it her fault. She should have anticipated the raid, should have reinforced the western border, should have done more with less. And Kael would agree with them. Because she wasn't Celine, she wasn't charming or beautiful or effortless. She was just Alara, the orphan, the workhorse, the unseen backbone. She walked back to her quarters slowly, cataloging every injury, every ache. Her packed bag was still hidden in the closet, ready. Alara pulled it out, added a few more essentials, and sat on the bed. She could leave now, slip away while everyone was distracted with the raid aftermath. But something held her back, some stupid, stubborn part that wanted to see how this ended. She wouldn't have to wait long. 3 days later, recovered enough to move without limping, Alara was pulling a night shift on perimeter watch. It was quiet work, solitary. The kind of assignment nobody wanted. Perfect for her. She was checking the northern markers when she heard voices. Instinct pulled her into the shadows. 2 figures moved through the trees, close together. Even in darkness, she recognized them. Kael and Celine. Can't keep pretending, Celine was saying. It's not fair to any of us. The bond is sacred. Your father is dead, Kael, and he bound you to someone you don't love. Silence. Alara's hands clenched. I never said I don't love her, Kael said finally, and Alara's traitorous heart jumped before he continued. But I don't. Not the way a mate should. She's a good person, competent, but there's no passion, no connection. Because you never had a choice. No, Kael agreed quietly. I didn't. Celine moved closer. If you could choose, I can't. But if you could. Kael's hands came up to cup Celine's face. You know the answer. They kissed. Alara watched, completely detached, as if she were observing strangers. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and hungry. When they finally broke apart, Celine whispered, Leave her. I can't break a sacred bond. You're not breaking it. She is. Everyone sees how she's pulling away, isolating herself. When she finally leaves, no one will blame you. She won't leave. She's too loyal. Then give her a reason. Celine's voice turned calculating. Make it impossible for her to stay. Kael hesitated. I won't hurt her. You already are. Every day you stay bound to someone you don't love, you hurt her. This would be mercy. Alara didn't wait to hear more. She walked away, silent as smoke, and returned to her quarters. She pulled out the bag, checked its contents one final time. Then she sat and waited for dawn. She didn't have to wait for a reason to leave. Celine was right about that. She'd known for months this was inevitable. But some part of her, the part that had survived being orphaned and dismissed and used, wanted the final push to come from Kael himself, wanted to see exactly how far he'd go. She got her answer 2 nights later. The pack meeting was called to address ongoing security concerns after the Thornback raid. Alara attended, standing in the back as usual. Kael stood at the front with his senior advisors, including, notably, Celine. The recent raid exposed weaknesses in our defense coordination, Kael began. Weaknesses in leadership and communication. Alara felt the shift in the room. The way eyes started sliding toward her. Our border security has been managed inefficiently, Kael continued. Important information isn't being shared. Decisions are being made in isolation. He was talking about her, about the western border raid she'd stopped. Celine stepped forward, her face grave. I've reviewed the patrol logs. There are significant discrepancies. Routes changed without authorization. Resources allocated without oversight. Lies. All lies. But the pack was listening. Furthermore, Celine said, supplies have gone missing from winter stores. Not much. Just enough to suggest someone is planning to leave, to abandon the pack. The room erupted. Alara stood very still, watching her life get systematically dismantled. That's absurd, Nina shouted from across the room. Alara has given everything to this pack. Has she? Thorne countered. Or has she been serving her own interests, hiding behind paperwork while real wolves do the fighting? She killed 3 raiders alone. She took an unauthorized action that could have compromised the entire Eastern defense. Kael cut in, and his voice was final. Absolute. If the Western raid had been larger, if she'd been killed, we would have had no warning. Alara almost laughed. He was blaming her for saving lives. Where are the missing supplies, Alara? Celine asked gently, kindly. Every eye turned to her. Alara met Kael's gaze across the room. Saw nothing there. No recognition of the 12 years she'd given him. No acknowledgement of the girl who'd loved him so completely, she'd made herself invisible just to stay close. Nothing. I don't have to answer to you, Alara said clearly. Any of you. You're a member of this pack, Kael said. You answer to your alpha. You're not my alpha. The words fell like stones. You're a title I got bound to by a dead man's command. There's a difference. Kael's eyes flashed. Careful. Or what? Alara stepped forward. You'll reject me? Cast me out? Please. Save us both the pretense. You're being irrational. I'm being clear. Maybe for the first time. She looked around the room. You want to know where the supplies are? They're exactly where I logged them. You want to know why the defenses have weaknesses? Because every decision I make gets overridden. Every strategy I develop gets dismissed. You want someone to blame for your problems? She turned back to Kael. Look in a mirror. The room went dead silent. Kael's face hardened into something terrible. You're out of line. I'm out of patience. Alara felt something crack open inside her. Not a break, but a release. I've spent 12 years holding this pack together while you learned to play alpha. I've managed your messes, fixed your mistakes, and made you look competent. And my thanks is to be scapegoated for failures that aren't mine. That's enough. No, Alara cut him off. It's not nearly enough. You want to talk about betrayal? About abandoning the pack? Look at yourself. Look at her. She gestured to Celine. Everyone in this room knows what's happening. You're just waiting for me to leave so you can pretend you didn't force me out. No one is forcing anything, Kael said coldly. Then prove it. Show the pack the supply logs, the patrol records. Prove I'm lying. She saw the flicker in his eyes, the hesitation. He couldn't, because she wasn't lying, but he'd already committed. I don't have to prove anything to you, Kael said. You've proven yourself unworthy of the bond. And there it was. Alara felt the mate bond strain between them, that forced connection she'd never asked for. It would hurt to break it, hurt both of them. She didn't care anymore. Then break it, she said quietly. If I'm so unworthy, break the bond and let me go. Kael went very still. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more. Where will you go? You have nothing. You're nothing without this pack. The cruelty was meant to wound, to make her beg. Instead, Alara smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. I guess we'll find out. She turned and walked toward the door. If you leave, Kael called after her, you leave as a traitor. You'll be hunted. No pack will take you. Alara paused at the threshold. Better to be hunted than buried alive. She walked out into the night and didn't look back. Behind her, the pack meeting dissolved into shouting. Nina's voice rose above the chaos, defending her. A few others joined in, but Alara didn't stop to listen. She went to her quarters, grabbed her bag, and walked straight through the pack center toward the boundary markers. Nina caught up with her at the tree line. Elle, wait. Don't, Alara said softly. Don't make this harder. Where will you go? East. Nina's eyes widened. Moonfall? Are you insane? Ronan Vale will kill you. Maybe, or maybe he'll see what Iron Ridge couldn't. Alara gripped Nina's hand briefly. Take care of yourself, and when this all falls apart, because it will, don't say I didn't warn them. Come back, Nina whispered. When Kael comes to his senses, he won't. And I won't. Alara squeezed once and let go. Be well, Nina. She crossed the boundary marker without ceremony. The mate bond pulled at her, trying to draw her back. She felt Kael on the other end of it, felt his anger, his certainty, his absolute conviction that she'd come crawling back. Alara took a breath and did something she'd been told was impossible. She severed the bond herself. It felt like tearing out her own spine, pain white and absolute burning through every nerve. She screamed, couldn't help it, and fell to her knees in the dirt. But when the pain faded, she felt light, free. Alara stood on shaking legs and kept walking, into rival territory, into the unknown, into whatever came next. Behind her, somewhere in Iron Ridge, she knew Kael had felt the severing, would be reeling from the shock of it. Good. Let him wonder. Let him regret. Let him realize too late that loyalty isn't infinite, and that some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Alara Vance walked into the darkness and left her old life behind like a shed skin. She didn't know what waited ahead, but for the first time in 12 years, she was walking toward something instead of away. And that was enough. The forest floor was frozen solid, every step echoing like a gunshot in the silence. Alara moved carefully through Moonfall territory, hyper-aware that she was now prey. The severed bond had left her shaky, disoriented, like losing a limb she'd hated but grown accustomed to. Her wolf senses felt sharper without Kael's presence cluttering her instincts, but that clarity came with a price. She was utterly, completely alone. No pack sent to protect her, no bond to prove allegiance. Just a rogue wolf walking into rival territory with nothing but a bag and a death wish. The first patrol found her before dawn. She heard them coming, 4 wolves, moving in coordinated formation. Professional, efficient. Everything Iron Ridge's patrols had stopped being under Kael's scattered leadership. Alara stopped walking and raised her hand slowly, showing she was unarmed. Well, mostly unarmed. The knife was still strapped to her thigh, but she wasn't stupid enough to reach for it. The wolves circled her, silent and assessing. Then they shifted. 3 men, 1 woman, all of them bigger than Alara, all of them wearing expressions that said they'd killed rogues before and wouldn't lose sleep over one more. The woman stepped forward. She was tall, muscular, with short dark hair and a scar bisecting her left eyebrow. "You're Iron Ridge." It wasn't a question. Alara's scent would still carry traces of her old pack for days. "Was," Alara corrected. "Defector or exile. Does it matter?" The woman's eyes narrowed. "It does if you're a spy." "If I were a spy, I wouldn't have walked straight down the main patrol route." Alara kept her voice level. "I'd have information worth trading. I have nothing except a request." "Rogues don't make requests, they beg." "I'm not begging." One of the men laughed, low and mean. "You will be." The woman held up a hand, silencing him. She studied Alara with the kind of attention that missed nothing. The healing cuts from the Thornback raid, the exhaustion written into every line of her body, the bag that held everything Alara owned. "What's the request?" the woman asked. "Audience with Alpha Vale." The patrol members exchanged glances. The mean one smiled. "You want to die formally? That can be arranged." "I want," Alara said clearly, "to offer my services to Moonfall Pack in exchange for sanctuary." Silence. Then the woman asked, "What services?" "Logistics, strategy, resource management, territory assessment. I've been running Iron Ridge's operations for 12 years. Alara met her gaze steadily. "I know every weakness in their defense, every supply route, every patrol pattern, every grudge festering under the surface." "And you'd sell out your pack for what? Revenge?" "For survival." Alara's voice went hard. "And they're not my pack anymore." The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she gestured sharply to the others. "Bind her hands. We're taking her to the Alpha." Alara didn't resist as they tied her wrists with rough cord, didn't complain when they took her bag and knife. She'd expected this. What she hadn't expected was the territory itself. As they marched her deeper into Moonfall land, the differences became stark. Where Iron Ridge was scattered and chaotic, dens built wherever space allowed, resources hoarded individually, Moonfall was organized, structured. The main settlement sat in a natural valley with clear sightlines and defensive positions. Housing arranged in concentric circles, with the most vulnerable families protected at the center. It was exactly how Alara had tried to reorganize Iron Ridge 3 years ago. Kael had called her ideas overcomplicated and dismissed them. The patrol led her straight to a large timber lodge at the valley's heart. Guards flanked the entrance, watching her with identical expressions of cold assessment. Inside, the lodge was warm and surprisingly civilized. Maps covered one wall. The other held weapons, maintained, organized, ready. A large table dominated the center of the room, covered in papers and correspondence, and at that table sat Alpha Ronan Vale. Alara had expected someone like Kael, all flash and intimidation, ruling through dominance and fear. Ronan Vale was nothing like Kael. He was older, maybe 40, with gray threading through dark hair he kept tied back. Tall and broad-shouldered, but it was the way he held himself that caught attention. Utterly still, utterly controlled, like violence wrapped in patience. His eyes, when they met hers, were the color of winter storms. "Found her on the eastern route," the scarred woman reported. "Claims she's defected from Iron Ridge, wants to trade information for sanctuary." Ronan's gaze didn't leave Alara. "Untie her." The woman blinked. "Alpha, she walked here unarmed. If she meant harm, she's remarkably bad at it." His voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. "Untie her." They cut the cords. Alara rubbed her wrists, studying him as openly as he studied her. "You're Alara Vance," Ronan said. Not a question. "You know who I am?" "I make it my business to know who runs enemy operations." "You've been Iron Ridge's real strategist for years. Kael Draven is the face, you're the function." He leaned back in his chair. "So when the function shows up in my territory alone, I pay attention. What happened?" "Does it matter?" "It does if you're here for revenge instead of sanctuary. Revenge makes people reckless. I don't tolerate reckless." "Fair enough." Alara took a breath. "Kael and I were mate bonded by his father's deathbed command. arranged. Neither of us wanted it, but only one of us was honest about that. I spent 3 years being undermined, dismissed, and blamed for failures that weren't mine. A week ago, his lover orchestrated a situation to make me look like a traitor. He believed her without question, so I left. And severed the bond. Ronan's eyes sharpened. That's not easy. No, it's not. Most wolves die from the trauma. I'm not most wolves. Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. What do you want from Moonfall? A place. Work. I don't need status or recognition. I just need to not be invisible. Everyone here earns their place, no exceptions. I'm offering to earn it. I know Iron Ridge inside and out. I know Thornback's raiding patterns. They hit Iron Ridge twice last month using coordinated diversions. I know which packs are stable trading partners, and which ones are looking for weakness to exploit. Alara straightened her shoulders. I'm very good at what I do, and what I do is make packs function. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the map wall. Show me Iron Ridge's patrol routes. Alara joined him. The map was detailed, accurate. She traced the routes with her finger, noting where they'd been weakened, where Kael had made changes that left gaps. Here, she said, pointing to the northwestern quadrant, this route used to run twice daily. Now it's once every 3 days. And here, she moved to the southern border. The patrol timing is staggered incorrectly. There's a 2-hour window where the entire southern approach is unwatched. Why would he do that? He didn't. I did. When I was running operations. The stagger was intentional, unpredictable to outsiders, but Kael changed the timing to be more efficient without understanding the pattern. Now it's predictable. Exploitable. Ronan studied the map. And if I wanted to hit Iron Ridge, where would you suggest? The question was a test. Alara knew it. She also knew the answer. I wouldn't suggest hitting them at all. Iron Ridge is collapsing from the inside. Kael's leadership is reactive, not strategic. His mate replacement is ambitious but inexperienced. The pack is fractured. Give them 6 months and they'll tear themselves apart without you lifting a finger. That's not the answer I expected. You asked what I'd suggest. Wasting resources on a pack that's self-destructing is bad strategy. Ronan's mouth quirked, almost a smile. What if I wanted them gone faster? Then I'd exploit the food stores. Iron Ridge has enough supplies to last the winter, but just barely. Disrupt 1 or 2 key trade routes and they'll be starving by first thaw. Hungry packs make desperate decisions. You'd condemn your former pack to starvation? I tell you the truth about their vulnerabilities. What you do with that information is your choice. Alara met his gaze directly. I'm not here for revenge, but I'm not here to protect them either. They made their decision. I made mine. Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to the scarred woman. Jessa, set her up in the guest quarters. Post a guard. For her protection, not imprisonment. Jessa's eyebrows shot up. You're granting sanctuary? I'm granting a trial period. She proves useful. She stays. She causes problems. She leaves. Vertically or horizontally, depending on the problem. It was the best offer Alara was going to get. Understood, she said. One more thing. Ronan's voice stopped her at the door. The bond you severed. Are you still recovering? I'm functional. That's not what I asked. Alara hesitated. It hurts. But I'll manage. Jessa, have the healer check her over. Bond severance can cause delayed trauma. Ronan returned to his paperwork, dismissing them. Welcome to Moonfall, Alara Vance. Try not to die in the first week. Jessa led her out, shaking her head. You've got nerve, I'll give you that. Most defectors come in broken and desperate. You walked in like you were negotiating a business deal. Desperation doesn't inspire confidence. No, Jessa agreed. It doesn't. This way. The guest quarters were small but clean, a far cry from Alara's shed in Iron Ridge. Single room, bed, table, chair. A window with actual glass. Luxury. Guard stays outside, Jessa said. Not to keep you in, to keep others from making stupid decisions. Some pack members won't like having an Iron Ridge wolf here, no matter what the alpha says. Understood. Healer will be by within the hour. Get some rest. You look like you need it. Jessa left, posting a young male guard outside the door. Alara sat on the bed and let herself feel it. The exhaustion, the pain, the absolute insanity of what she'd just done. She'd betrayed her pack, offered intelligence to their rivals, burned every bridge behind her, and she didn't regret it, not even a little. The healer arrived as promised, an older woman named Marta who poked and prodded Alara with brisk efficiency, asking pointed questions about the bond severance. "You're lucky," Marta said finally. "Most wolves who sever a mate bond don't survive the first night. The ones who do usually wish they hadn't." "How comforting." "I'm not here to comfort. I'm here to make sure you don't collapse during patrol and become everyone else's problem." Marta handed her a packet of herbs. "Tea, twice daily. It'll help with the phantom bond pain. And get proper sleep. Your body's been through trauma." After Marta left, Alara lay down, intending to rest for just a moment. She woke 12 hours later to someone knocking. "Food!" a gruff voice called through the door. Alara opened it to find a different guard, older, harder, holding a tray. He shoved it at her without ceremony and returned to his post. The food was simple but well prepared. Meat, bread, vegetables. More than she'd eaten in days. She was finishing when Jessa returned. "Alpha wants you. Now." Alara followed her back to the main lodge, where Ronan sat with several other wolves, his senior counsel, she assumed. "Alara," Ronan said without preamble, "tell me about Thornback Pack." So began her integration into Moonfall. For 3 days they questioned her, about Iron Ridge's defenses, trade agreements, internal politics, about neighboring packs, their strengths, weaknesses, likely alliances, about terrain, resources, seasonal patterns. Alara answered everything honestly. She had nothing left to protect. On the 4th day, Ronan took her on a tour of the territory. "Moonfall is smaller than Iron Ridge," he explained as they walked the perimeter. "But we're more defensible. The valley gives us natural protection. We trade quality for quantity." "Smart," Alara said. "Iron Ridge spreads too thin, trying to hold more ground than they can actually defend. I noticed your predecessor had the same problem. My predecessor died in a border skirmish that could have been avoided with better coordination." Ronan glanced at her. "You tried to tell them." "I tried to tell them a lot of things." They walked in silence for a while. The forest here was different from Iron Ridge, older, denser. The cold bit deeper, but there was a strange peace to it. "Why did you really leave?" Ronan asked eventually. "I told you. You told me the facts, not the reason." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "You could have stayed, endured, waited for Kale to fail and proved yourself right. Instead, you walked away from 12 years of work into enemy territory with no guarantee of survival. Why?" Alara considered lying, considered deflecting. Instead, she told the truth. "Because I was tired of being invisible, tired of loving someone who saw me as an inconvenience, tired of holding together a pack that would rather believe I was sabotaging them than accept that their alpha was incompetent." She met his eyes. "I left because staying would have killed me. Maybe not physically, but everything that made me me. That would have died. And I couldn't let that happen." Ronan nodded slowly. "Good answer. Was it a test?" "Everything here is a test. You're doing well so far." On the 5th day, they put her to work. Jessa took her to the supply depot, a well-organized storehouse that still had inefficiencies Alara spotted immediately. "Your system is good," Alara said, examining the inventory logs. "But you're losing time on distribution. If you reorganize by family cluster instead of resource type, you cut the sorting process in half." Jessa frowned. "Show me." Alara spent the next 6 hours restructuring the depot. By evening, the distribution run that usually took 3 hours was done in 90 minutes. Word spread fast. By the 6th day, pack members were approaching her with questions. Small things at first: optimal hunting routes, equipment maintenance schedules, conflict resolution between families. Alara helped where she could, stayed quiet where she couldn't. She noticed the way people watched her, wary but curious, testing her. She noticed Ronan watching too, always from a distance, never interfering, just observing. On the 7th day, everything went wrong. Alara was helping reorganize the patrol schedules when a runner burst into the lodge, wild-eyed and bleeding. "Border breach, southern quadrant, Iron Ridge wolves." The room erupted. Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. "How many?" 10, maybe 12. They're demanding we return stolen property." "What property?" The runner's eyes slid to Alara. A defector. They want her back. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Every eye turned to Alara. "Did you know about this?" Jessa demanded. "How the hell would I know? I've been here for a week with a guard watching my every move." Ronan raised a hand for silence. "What exactly did they say?" "That she stole pack secrets and intelligence. That she's a traitor who needs to face Iron Ridge justice. They're demanding we hand her over, or it's an act of war." Alara's stomach dropped. This was Kyle, reckless, reactive, and absolutely convinced he was in the right. "We should return her," one of the council members said immediately. "It's not worth a war over one rogue." "She's not a rogue," Ronan said quietly. "I granted her sanctuary. You granted a trial period, which she's used to bring Iron Ridge to our doorstep." "I didn't bring them anywhere," Alara snapped. "Kyle's pride is bringing them. He can't stand that I left." "Or you're exactly the spy we thought you were, and this was the plan all along." "If this was the plan, it's the stupidest plan in history. Why would I trade detailed intelligence about my own pack just to lure you into a fight you'd clearly win? Maybe Iron Ridge wants us to think they're weak. Maybe—" "Enough!" Ronan's voice wasn't loud, but it silenced everyone. He looked at Alara. "Did you tell anyone in Iron Ridge where you were going?" "One person. Nina. She's a friend, or was. She wouldn't tell Kyle. Unless he forced her to." Alara's blood ran cold. She hadn't considered that. Kale, desperate and angry, interrogating the pack to find out who knew where she'd gone. "If he heard her to find me—" "That's an Iron Ridge problem, not ours," the council member cut in. "We need to decide how to respond." Ronan studied Alara with those storm-gray eyes. "Did you steal pack secrets?" "No. Everything I know I learned through 12 years of service. It's my knowledge. They don't own my memory." "Did you plan to betray Moonfall?" "No." "Do you have any contact with Iron Ridge wolves since you arrived here?" "None." "Your guards can confirm that." Ronan nodded slowly. Then he turned to his council. "We're not handing her over." "Alpha—" "She's under Moonfall protection now. Iron Ridge doesn't dictate our decisions. They have 12 wolves at our border, and we have 40. Math favors us." Ronan stood. "Jessa, assemble a response team. 20 fighters, defensive formation. We go to the border and make our position clear." "And if they attack?" Jessa asked. "Then we defend our territory and our pack members, which includes Alara." He looked around the room, his voice going hard. "Anyone who disagrees with this decision can leave. Now." No one moved. Ronan nodded. "Good. Alara, you're staying here with a guard detail. Not negotiable." "I should go with you. If Kyle sees me—" "If Kale sees you, he'll do something stupid and force us into a fight we don't need. You stay." His voice softened slightly. "Trust me." Alara wanted to argue, but Ronan was right. Her presence would escalate things. "Understood," she said quietly. Ronan and his fighters left within the hour. Alara paced her quarters, 2 guards stationed outside, helpless and furious. This was exactly what she'd feared. Her presence endangering her new pack before she'd even proven her worth. If Moonfall went to war with Iron Ridge over her, every death would be her fault. The waiting was torture. Hours dragged past with no word. Alara stared out the window, watching the sky darken, imagining scenarios. Kyle attacking. Ronan retaliating. Blood on snow. Nina, interrogated and hurt because she'd tried to help. Finally, as night fell completely, she heard movement outside. The guards straightened. Voices, low and controlled. The door opened. Ronan stepped inside alone. No blood. No injuries. "What happened?" Alara asked immediately. "Kyle made his demands. I refused them. He postured. I didn't blink. Eventually, he left." "That's it?" "He's not stupid enough to attack when he's outnumbered 2-1 on foreign ground." Ronan studied her. "But he's not done. He made that very clear." "What did he say?" "That you stole from Iron Ridge, that you're a traitor and a liar, that any pack harboring you is making an enemy of Iron Ridge." Alara closed her eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring this to your doorstep. Did you steal anything?" "No." "Did you lie to me?" "No." "Then you have nothing to apologize for." Ronan moved to the window, looking out at the darkness. Kale Draven is a mediocre alpha playing at greatness. He's angry because you left and took his competence with you. This tantrum isn't about justice. It's about control. He'll keep pushing. Probably. Let him. Ronan turned back to her. You need to understand something about Moonfall. We don't abandon pack members. We don't trade them for convenience. If you're here, you're ours. And we protect what's ours. Something in Alara's chest cracked open. I don't understand, she said quietly. You barely know me. Why would you risk war for— Because, Ronan interrupted, a pack that throws away its best people for politics isn't a pack worth respecting. And an alpha who can't see value when it's standing right in front of him is an alpha who's already lost. He moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start teaching you Moonfall's systems. If you're going to be here, you might as well be useful. He left before Alara could respond. She stood in the quiet room feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next morning, Jessa appeared at her door with a new assignment, analyzing Moonfall's trade agreements for inefficiencies. Alpha wants your assessment by end of week, Jessa said. Think you can handle it? Alara took the stack of documents. I can handle it. She spent the next 4 days buried in paperwork, identifying gaps and proposing solutions. It was familiar work, comfortable work. The kind of thing she'd been doing at Iron Ridge for years without recognition. Here, people actually listened to her recommendations. By the time she presented her findings to Ronan and his council, she'd compiled a 20-page analysis with actionable suggestions. The council members reviewed it in silence. Finally, one of them, an older male named Garrett, who'd been skeptical from the start, looked up. This is thorough. It's what you asked for, Alara said. These recommendations would increase our trade efficiency by almost 30%. Conservative estimate. Could be higher with proper implementation. Garrett looked at Ronan. We should have hired her years ago. Something like satisfaction flickered across Ronan's face. Agreed. Alara, how would you feel about making this official? Official. Pack strategist. Full position, full responsibilities. You'd work directly with me on defense, trade, resource allocation, everything you were doing at Iron Ridge, but with actual authority. He paused. And actual recognition. Alara stared at him. You're serious? I don't joke about pack positions. What about the others? They'll resent. They'll adjust. Anyone who can't work with you can leave. Ronan's voice was firm. I run this pack on competence, not popularity contests. You're competent. Do you want the job or not? It was everything she'd wanted at Iron Ridge and never received. Yes, Alara said. I want it. Good. You start immediately. Ronan stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Jessa will get you set up with an office and whatever resources you need. Welcome to Moonfall, Strategist Vance. The title settled over her like armor. Over the following weeks, Alara threw herself into work with the same intensity she'd given Iron Ridge. But here, it bore fruit. Her reorganization of patrol routes reduced conflicts with neighboring packs. Her trade negotiations secured better terms with southern suppliers. Her resource management ensured winter stores would last with comfortable margins. The pack noticed. Slowly, the wariness faded. Pack members started approaching her not with suspicion, but with respect. They asked her opinion, valued her input, trusted her. It was disorienting and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Ronan, for his part, was exactly what an alpha should be, decisive without being tyrannical, strong without being brutal. He listened to counsel, made informed decisions, and backed his people. Working with him was nothing like working with Kael. Kael had required constant management, his decisions erratic and ego-driven. Ronan was focused, strategic. He saw patterns where Kael saw only problems. He anticipated consequences where Kael reacted to symptoms. You're staring, Ronan said one evening as they reviewed Border Patrol reports. Alara blinked. Sorry? You do that sometimes. Look at me like I'm a puzzle you're trying to solve. I'm just adjusting to working with someone who actually listens. Low bar. You'd be surprised how many fail to clear it. Ronan's mouth quirked. Kael really was that bad. Kael is brilliant at being Kael. Charismatic, commanding, inspiring loyalty through sheer force of personality. But strategy, logistics, long-term planning. He thinks those things happen by magic. They happen because of people like you. People he couldn't see past his own reflection to value. His loss. Ronan set down his pen, regarding her steadily. Our gain. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with something Alara couldn't quite name. She looked away first. We should finalize the winter patrol schedule. Alara. Yes? You don't have to prove yourself anymore. You've already proven you belong here. The kindness in his voice was almost harder to bear than Kael's cruelty had been. Old habits, she said quietly. Break them. You're Moonfall now. Act like it. Easier said than done. But Alara tried. She started attending pack gatherings, started building relationships beyond professional necessity, started letting herself be part of the community instead of just its infrastructure. It was strange, uncomfortable, good. But of course, nothing good lasted without a fight. 2 months after her arrival, scouts reported movement at the Iron Ridge border. Not a raid, something worse, a formal challenge. Kael Draven was demanding a territorial negotiation with Ronan Vale face to face, and he specifically requested that Ilara Vance be present. The pack meeting erupted in arguments. It's a trap, Jessa said immediately. Obviously, Garrett agreed. He wants to humiliate her publicly. Or reclaim her, another voice suggested. The mate bond was severed, but he might argue it was done under duress. It wasn't, Alara said coldly. I chose to leave. Kael doesn't accept that kind of choice from anyone, let alone a mate. Jessa turned to Ronan. We can't send her. He'll use her as leverage. We can't not send her, Ronan countered. If we refuse, it signals we think she's a weakness, that we're hiding her. She's a complication. She's a pack member, Ronan cut in sharply, who will be treated as such. If Kael wants a negotiation, he gets one. Alara attends as Moonfall's strategist, because that's what she is. Alara's heart was hammering. What if he tries something? Then he learns what happens when someone threatens Moonfall's people. Ronan's voice was granite. You don't face him alone, Alara. You face him with the full weight of this pack behind you. 3 days later, they met at the neutral ground between territories, a frozen clearing marked by ancient stones that had witnessed generations of pack negotiations. Kael arrived with 8 wolves, including Celine. Ronan brought 8 as well, including Jessa, Garrett, and Alara. The 2 alphas faced each other across the clearing, ice and winter light gleaming off frost-covered ground, and Alara, standing beside Ronan, finally looked at Kael without flinching. He looked the same, beautiful and terrible, and utterly convinced of his righteousness. But he didn't look like her alpha anymore. He just looked like a man she used to know. Ronan Vale, Kael said, his voice carrying across the space. We need to discuss the matter of stolen property. We don't harbor thieves in Moonfall, Ronan replied evenly, so I assume you're here about something else. Kael's eyes cut to Alara. She took Iron Ridge intelligence when she defected. She took her own knowledge. There's a difference. She was bound to Iron Ridge by sacred mate bond, which she severed legally and permanently. Ronan's tone remained calm, but Alara heard the steel beneath it. She's Moonfall Pack now. If you have grievances about her tenure at Iron Ridge, they're irrelevant to me. Kael's jaw clenched. She's a traitor. She's a survivor who made a choice. You just don't like what she chose. I'm offering you one chance to return what's mine before this becomes a larger problem. Nothing here is yours. Ronan took a single step forward. And if you're threatening Moonfall, say it clearly so we all understand what you're starting. The tension ratcheted impossibly higher. Then Celine stepped forward, placing a delicate hand on Kael's arm. Perhaps, she said smoothly, we can discuss this more rationally. Alara, surely you see how your departure has affected Iron Ridge. People you cared about are suffering because you abandoned them. It was a beautiful manipulation, making it about guilt instead of territory. Alara looked at Celine and smiled coldly. You mean Nina? The friend you probably had interrogated to find out where I went? Alara's voice was clear, carrying. Or maybe you mean the pack members who are now learning that without me managing logistics, your winter stores are running short. How's that reorganization working out? Celine's mask slipped for just a second. "We're managing fine," Kyle snapped. "Are you?" "Because I've heard differently. I've heard Thornback hit you twice more since I left. Heard your southern trade route collapsed because you forgot to renegotiate terms before winter. Heard pack morale is in the gutter because—" Alara took a step forward. "It turns out the person holding everything together wasn't actually dead weight after all." "You think you're so superior," Kyle snarled. "Hiding behind a new alpha, playing at importance. I'm not playing. I'm doing the same work I always did, except here, people actually value it." Alara felt something fierce and hot rising in her chest. "You want to know why I left, Kyle? Really want to know? Because you made me invisible. You took credit for my work, blamed me for your failures, and let that woman poison the pack against me because she wanted my position. And when I finally had enough and walked away, instead of looking at yourself and asking why, you decided I was the problem. You broke our bond. I broke a chain. There's a difference." Kale's face went white with fury. "You belong at Iron Ridge. You swore loyalty to a pack that showed me none in return. I don't owe you anything, Kyle. Not my service, not my silence, and certainly not my life." Alara looked at him and felt nothing but pity. "I hope Celine is everything you wanted, because you traded competence for charisma, and eventually that's going to cost you everything." She turned her back on him. It was the ultimate dismissal. "We're done here," Ronan said, his voice final. "Leave our territory. And Draven, don't come back unless you're ready for war." Kale looked like he wanted to attack. His wolves were tense, ready, but they were outnumbered and on foreign ground. Finally, Kale turned and stalked away, Celine hurrying after him. As Iron Ridge retreated, Jessa let out a low whistle. Well, that was satisfying. Alara was shaking, adrenaline, fury, and something like liberation coursing through her. Ronan's hand landed briefly on her shoulder. "You did well. I might have just started a war." "No, you just made it very clear that chapter of your life is closed." He squeezed once and released. "Come on, let's go home." Home. Alara followed Moonfall's wolves back through the forest, and for the first time the word didn't feel like a lie. Home. The word still felt foreign in Alara's mouth 3 weeks later, like speaking a language she'd only read in books. She stood in her new office, an actual office, not a shed, reviewing supply manifests while snow fell thick outside the window. Moonfall was preparing for the deepest part of winter, and for once, Alara's recommendations were being implemented without argument or sabotage. It should have felt like victory. Instead, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. "You're doing it again," Jessa said from the doorway. Alara looked up. "Doing what?" "That thing where you stare at nothing and look like you're waiting for the sky to fall." Jessa entered, dropping into the chair across from Alara's desk with familiar ease. They'd developed something like friendship over the past weeks, the kind built on mutual respect and shared sarcasm. "The sky usually does fall. I'm just being realistic." "You're being paranoid." Jessa paused. "Though given your history, maybe that's justified." "Kale won't let this go. The confrontation at the border, that wasn't closure for him. That was humiliation." "Good. He deserved it." Deserved and dangerous are different things. Alara set down her pen. "He's unpredictable when his ego's been damaged, and Celine will be pushing him to retaliate." "Let them try. Moonfall is an Iron Ridge. We don't fold." Alara wanted to believe that, but she'd seen what desperation could do to a pack, what pride could do to an alpha. The unease sat in her gut like swallowed ice. That night, the first attack came. Not at Moonfall. At one of their allied trade posts, a small settlement that served as a neutral exchange point between 3 packs. Someone burned it to the ground. No casualties, thankfully, but all their winter supplies stored there, gone. Months of careful negotiation and stockpiling destroyed in one night. Ronan called an emergency council meeting. "Who did this?" Garrett demanded, slamming his fist on the table. "We don't know," Ronan said quietly. "No scent markers, no witnesses. Professional." "Thornback?" someone suggested. "Thornback doesn't operate that cleanly. They raid. They don't sabotage." Jessa looked at Alara. "What do you think?" All eyes turned to her. Alara stared at the map of the trade post location, her mind working through possibilities. "It's strategic. Taking out the trade post doesn't just hurt us, it hurts everyone who used it, which means whoever did this wants to destabilize the entire region, not just Moonfall. Or they want to isolate us, Ronan said, following her logic. Cut our supply lines before winter deepens. That would take planning, coordination. Alara's stomach clenched, and inside knowledge of which locations matter most. The implication hung heavy in the air. You think someone here leaked information, Garrett said flatly. I think someone with detailed knowledge of our trade network told someone else where to strike for maximum impact. Alara met his gaze. And there are exactly two people who have that knowledge. Me and whoever I briefed on trade logistics last week. That was half the senior council, Jessa said. Exactly, which means either we have a traitor or... Alara stopped. Or what? Ronan prompted. Or Iron Ridge has spies watching our movements closely enough to identify critical infrastructure without inside help. Alara stood, moving to the map wall. The trade post sits at the intersection of 3 territories. If they'd been surveilling it, they'd see the traffic patterns, see how much we depend on it. KL doesn't have the patience for long-term surveillance, Jessa argued. No, but Celine does. The name dropped like a stone. Ronan leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. You think she's orchestrating this? I think she's smart enough to see an opportunity and ruthless enough to exploit it. Kale wants me back or dead. Either works for his ego. But Celine wants Moonfall weakened. She knows if you lose trade access before deep winter, your pack suffers. Hungry wolves are desperate wolves. And desperate wolves make mistakes, Ronan finished, or alliances they wouldn't normally consider. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. We need to verify our supply lines, Ronan decided. Alara, I want a full audit of every trade route, every storage location. If there's another target, I want to know before they hit it. On it. Jessa, double the border patrols. I want eyes on every approach to Moonfall territory. Consider it done. And someone get word to our allies. If this is a coordinated attack, they need to be ready. The meeting dissolved into action. Alara worked through the night, cross-referencing maps and supply records, identifying vulnerabilities. By dawn, she'd compiled a list of 7 high-priority targets. She brought it to Ronan, who studied it with grim focus. If they hit even 3 of these, we're in trouble, he said. I know, we need to redistribute supplies, make the targets less valuable. That'll take days. Then we start now. They did. For the next 72 hours, Moonfall operated at maximum capacity, moving supplies, reinforcing positions, preparing for the worst. The second attack came on the 4th night. This time it was a hunting party, 6 of Moonfall's best hunters, ambushed in neutral territory. 4 dead. 2 critically injured. The survivors reported their attackers wore no pack markers, fought like professionals, disappeared like ghosts. The pack was furious, grieving, demanding retaliation. Ronan held them steady, barely. We don't strike without proof, he told the assembly. We don't become what they want us to be, reckless and reactive. Our people are dead, someone shouted, and more will die if we charge into a trap. Ronan's voice cut through the anger. This is calculated. Someone is baiting us. We will respond, but we will respond smart. Alara stood beside him, feeling the weight of hostile stares. Not from everyone, but enough. After the assembly, Garrett cornered her outside the lodge. You need to leave, he said, without preamble. Alara went very still. Excuse me? This started when you arrived. Iron Ridge making demands, trade posts burning, our hunters murdered. Garrett's face was hard, but not cruel. I don't think you're a spy, but I think you're the reason we're under attack, and the pack is starting to think so too. So that's it? Sacrifice me to make the problem go away? I'm trying to save lives. If you leave, maybe this stops. And if it doesn't? If Celine's already decided Moonfall needs to be brought down, and I'm just the convenient excuse? Alara stepped closer. You think wolves like her stop once they smell blood? I think we can't afford to find out. Garrett's voice softened slightly. You're good at what you do, smart, valuable. But you're not worth a war. The words landed like a physical blow. Alara had heard variations of them her entire life. At Iron Ridge, she'd been useful but replaceable. Here, she was competent but expendable. Some things never changed. Does Ronan know you're saying this? She asked quietly. Ronan's judgment is compromised where you're concerned. What does that mean? It means he sees your value and forgets the cost. Garrett shook his head. Someone has to think practically. He walked away, leaving Alara standing alone in the cold. She didn't tell Ronan about the conversation, didn't mention the growing whispers she overheard, speculation that maybe Garrett was right. Maybe she was more trouble than she was worth. Instead, she threw herself into work with renewed desperation. If she was valuable enough, maybe they'd keep her. If she solved this problem, maybe she'd earn her place. The pattern was familiar, toxic. She recognized it even as she fell into it, but recognition didn't stop her. She worked 16-hour days, analyzing attack patterns, predicting next moves, coordinating defenses. She barely ate, barely slept. Jessa noticed. "You're going to collapse," she said, finding Alara in her office well past midnight. "I'm fine." "You're really not." Jessa sat down uninvited. "What's going on?" "Nothing, just busy." "Alara," Jessa's voice went gentle. "Talk to me." And maybe it was the exhaustion, or the fear, or the bone-deep loneliness that came from being the outsider again. But Alara broke. "Garrett thinks I should leave," she said quietly. "He thinks I'm the reason Moonfall is under attack. Garrett's an idiot. He's not wrong. This did start with me." "No. This started with Kael being a vindictive child and Celine being a manipulative snake. You're just the excuse they're using." Jessa leaned forward. "Don't let them make you think you're the problem. You're not." "Then why does everyone keep leaving me?" The question came out raw, revealing more than Alara intended. Jessa was quiet for a moment. "Not everyone. I'm still here. Ronan's still here. Half the pack would fight anyone who tried to make you leave. And the other half are scared. People lash out when they're scared. Doesn't mean they're right." Alara wanted to believe that, but belief was a luxury she'd stopped being able to afford. The third attack came 5 days later. This time, they were ready. Alara had predicted the target, a small outpost on Moonfall's eastern border that housed medical supplies. She'd convinced Ronan to set a trap, move most of the supplies, leave just enough to look legitimate, and post hidden guards. When the attackers came, Moonfall was waiting. The fight was brief and brutal. They captured 2 of the attackers alive. Under interrogation, one of them broke. Not Iron Ridge wolves, as suspected. Mercenaries. Hired by someone who wanted Moonfall destabilized but didn't want to risk direct confrontation. "Who hired you?" Ronan demanded. The mercenary, bleeding and beaten, smiled through broken teeth. "Didn't give a name, just paid well, said you'd taken something that didn't belong to you, said to make you regret it." Alara's blood ran cold. "Describe them," she said. "Her, blonde, beautiful. Talked pretty but had dead eyes." "Celine." Ronan and Alara exchanged glances. "Where were you supposed to report back?" Ronan asked. "Neutral ground, 3 miles north of here, tomorrow at dawn." Ronan smiled, sharp and cold. "Perfect." The plan was simple. Ronan would take the mercenary to the meeting point, posing as a representative offering to negotiate. Meanwhile, Jessa and a strike team would flank the location, ready to capture whoever showed up to collect the report. "I should go with you," Alara said. "No," Ronan said immediately. "If Celine is there, then she's there for you. Walking into her trap is exactly what she wants. Or it's exactly what she won't expect. She thinks I'm hiding behind Moonfall's protection. Showing up proves I'm not afraid. It proves you're reckless. It proves I don't run anymore." Alara met his eyes. "This is my fight, Ronan. Let me fight it." He stared at her for a long moment. "You stay behind me. You don't engage unless I give the signal. And if things go wrong, you run. Understood?" "Understood." They assembled at the meeting point an hour before dawn. Ronan, Alara, Jessa's strike team hidden in the surrounding forest, and the mercenary, bound and guarded. The location was a small clearing marked by a fallen oak surrounded by dense trees. Good cover, multiple escape routes. Professional choice. They waited. Dawn broke cold and gray. Frost glittered on dead grass. Then, movement. 3 figures emerged from the tree line. Celine walked in the center, flanked by 2 large males Alara didn't recognize. She moved with that same floating grace, completely unbothered by the cold or the danger. When she saw Alara, she smiled. There you are, Celine said warmly. I was wondering if you'd have the courage to show. Wondering if you'd have the courage to stop hiding behind hired killers, Alara replied. Oh, these? Celine gestured to the mercenaries. Just insurance. Moonfall has been so unwelcoming to Iron Ridge interests lately. Someone had to remind you that actions have consequences. You murdered 6 wolves, Ronan said, his voice deadly quiet. I hired people to send a message. What they did with that contract is between them and their conscience. Celine's smile never wavered. Besides, you're harboring a fugitive, a traitor who broke sacred bonds and stole from her pack. That kind of insult demands a response. Alara stole nothing. She left. Legally. Is that what she told you? Celine laughed, light and musical. And you believed her? Alpha Vale, I expected better from someone of your reputation. I believe evidence, of which you've provided none. Haven't I? Celine tilted her head. Ask yourself, what has Moonfall gained from sheltering her? Attacks, deaths, instability. She's poison, Alpha. The sooner you accept that, the sooner this can end. The only thing ending today is your little campaign, Ronan said. Is it? Celine's eyes gleamed. I don't think so. You see, this was never about Alara. She's just the catalyst. This is about Moonfall learning its place in the territorial hierarchy. Our place is wherever we choose to stand. How noble, how foolish. Celine's gaze shifted to Alara. Last chance. Come back to Iron Ridge, face proper justice. Kyle might even be merciful if you beg. I'd rather die. That can be arranged. Celine raised her hand. The forest exploded with movement. Not 3 wolves, not 5. 20, maybe more. They'd walked straight into an ambush. Run! Ronan shouted, shifting mid-word into his wolf form. Chaos erupted. Jessa's strike team burst from their hiding spots, engaging the attackers, but they were outnumbered. Badly. Alara ran just as Ronan had ordered, but she didn't run away. She ran toward the tree line, circling back, looking for an advantage. Her mind raced through tactical options while her heart hammered against her ribs. She spotted Celine moving through the fight, staying clear of the violence, directing her wolves with hand signals. A general, not a soldier. Alara shifted direction, closing the distance. If she could get to Celine, capture her, maybe they could end this without more bloodshed. She was 10 feet away when someone slammed into her from the side. Alara hit the ground hard, tasting blood, rolled instinctively as claws raked where her throat had been. Her attacker was huge. One of Celine's bodyguards shifted into a wolf easily twice Alara's size. She couldn't win this fight, not with strength, so she didn't try. Alara scrambled backward, leading him away from the main fight, into denser cover. He followed, confident in his advantage. When he lunged, she dodged and let his momentum carry him into a tree. Used the half-second of disorientation to shift into her own wolf form, smaller, faster, built for survival rather than dominance. The fight became a brutal dance. He had power. She had desperation. Claws caught her shoulder. Teeth found her leg. Pain white-hot and immediate. But she was still standing, still moving. She feinted left. He followed, and she went right, straight for his exposed throat. Her teeth closed on fur and flesh. He threw her off, snarling, but the damage was done. Blood poured from the wound. He staggered, fell, didn't get up. Alara shifted back to human form, shaking and bleeding. The clearing had gone quiet. She limped back to find Moonfall victorious but battered. 3 attackers captured. The rest fled or dead. Ronan stood in the center, blood-spattered and furious, with Celine kneeling before him, captured. Alara, he said when he saw her. You're hurt. I'm alive. Jessa appeared at her side, supporting her weight. Healer, now. Not yet. Alara pulled away, focusing on Celine. Where's Kyle? Celine smiled, even in defeat. Wouldn't you like to know? This was all you, not him. Kyle wants you back. I want you gone. We found common ground. By murdering innocent wolves? By sending a message. Celine's voice remained calm, almost pleasant. That Moonfall's protection means nothing. That you'll bring death wherever you go. That... Ronan's hand closed around her throat, cutting off the words. You attacked my pack, he said softly. Killed my wolves. Threatened my territory. His grip tightened. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right here. Celine choked, gasped. Because I'm not alone. Meaning, she managed to smile despite the pressure. Iron Ridge is coming, full force, and if I don't report back, Kael attacks tonight. Ronan released her, letting her collapse to the ground. You're bluffing, Jessa said. Am I? Selene coughed, laughing. Why do you think I stalled? Why waste time talking? She looked at Alara. This was always the plan. Provoke, distract. And while you're here, congratulating yourselves, Kyle marches on Moonfall, with every ally he could buy. Alara's stomach dropped. The trade routes. The attacks. You weren't trying to weaken Moonfall. You were keeping us distracted. Smart girl. Too bad. You figured it out. Too late. Ronan was already moving, shouting orders. Get her secured. Send runners to the pack. Full defensive positions. Now! The strike team scattered. Alara stood in the clearing, pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. Every attack had been designed to pull Moonfall's attention outward, to make them focus on external threats while Kyle assembled an invasion force. And she'd helped. All her predictions, her defensive measures, they'd played right into Celine's hands. This isn't your fault, Ronan said, reading her expression. Isn't it? I brought this to your doorstep. They brought this. You just gave them an excuse to show their true colors. He gripped her shoulders. Can you fight? Alara looked down at her injuries. Nothing fatal. Everything painful. I can fight. Good. Because we're going to need everyone. They ran back to Moonfall, leaving guards with the prisoners. The valley came into view just as the sun crested the mountains, and on the ridge opposite, visible even from a distance, stood an army. Not just Iron Ridge, multiple packs, their banners snapping in the wind. Kael had called in every favor, made every deal, built a coalition, all to destroy Moonfall, all to reclaim one woman who dared to leave him. The pack was already mobilizing when they arrived. Fighters assembling, families retreating to the protected center. The organized chaos of people who drilled for this scenario but never expected to live it. Ronan went straight to his commanders, issuing orders with rapid precision. Alara found herself in the war room, staring at maps, calculating numbers that didn't favor them. We're outnumbered 3-1, Garrett said grimly. Maybe 4. Defensive position helps, Jessa argued. The valley funnels their approach. We hold the high ground on 3 sides. For how long? They can surround us. Starve us out. Not if we break their supply lines. They argued strategy while Alara's mind spun. This was wrong. All wrong. Kael was many things, but he wasn't a general. He didn't have the patience for sieges or the tactical mind for coordinated assaults, which meant someone else was planning this. Celine, who was currently in Moonfall's custody. Alara left the war room without explanation, heading for the holding cells. Celine sat calmly in her cage, looking for all the world like she was attending a garden party instead of awaiting execution. Come to gloat? Celine asked. Come to understand. Alara pulled up a chair. You hate me. Fine, but why this? Why drag multiple packs into a war that benefits nobody? Doesn't it? Kael gets revenge. I get rid of a rival. Moonfall gets put in its place. Celine smiled. Everyone wins. Except the wolves who die in the fighting. Acceptable losses. You're insane. I'm practical. Celine leaned forward. You think you're special because Ronan sees value in you? You're a tool, Alara. Just like you were to Kael. The only difference is this tool hasn't realized it's being used yet. Ronan's not like Kael. All alphas are like Kael. They take what's useful and discard the rest. You're useful now. Wait until you're not. The words burrowed under Alara's skin, finding old wounds. You won't win this, Alara said. I already have. Even if Moonfall survives, they'll always remember you brought war to their doorstep. They'll always wonder if keeping you was worth the cost. Celine's smile widened. I don't need to kill you, Alara. I just need to make you unwelcome everywhere you go, and I've done that beautifully. Alara stood, turning to leave. Wait, Celine called. Don't you want to know the best part? Against her better judgment, Alara paused. Kael doesn't even want you back. Not really. He wants to win. To prove he was right and you were wrong. Celine laughed softly. This entire war is about his ego. You're just the excuse. How does that feel? Alara walked away without answering, but the question followed her. She found Ronan on the wall, surveying the enemy forces. They're not attacking, he said when she joined him. Just positioning, waiting. For what? Probably for us to make the first mistake. He glanced at her. You should be with the healer. Later. Right now I need to ask you something. Ask. Alara took a breath. If giving me to Kael would end this without bloodshed, would you do it? Ronan went very still. No. Not even to save lives? Not even then. He turned to face her fully. You think I'm keeping you here out of strategy because you're useful? Aren't I? You're brilliant, competent, invaluable to this pack's operations. His voice softened. You're also stubborn, defensive, and you work yourself into the ground trying to prove you deserve to exist. And I'd keep you here even if you were none of those things. Why? Because you belong here, not as a tool, not as a strategy, as a person whose pack. He paused. And because somewhere in the last 3 months, I stopped seeing you as the defector from Iron Ridge and started seeing you as just you. And I like what I see. The admission hung between them, weighted with things neither was ready to name. Ronan! A horn blast cut her off. They both turned to the ridge. Kael's army was moving, not attacking, but one figure was descending alone, carrying a white banner, a parley request. It's a trap, Jessa said, appearing beside them. Probably, Ronan agreed. I'll take 12 wolves. No. Alara stepped forward. I'll go. Absolutely not. He wants me. Let's give him what he wants, a conversation, on my terms. Alara, I'm not giving up. I'm not surrendering. I'm ending this before more people die. She met his eyes. Trust me. Ronan looked like he wanted to argue, but finally he nodded. You don't go alone. I go with you, and we bring backup. Deal. They descended into the valley with 20 wolves at their backs, half Ronan's best fighters. Kael met them at the center point with an equal number. He looked different, harder, more desperate. Alara, he said, just her name, like a prayer or a curse. Kael, this ends today, one way or another. Agreed, so let's talk. There's nothing to talk about. You return to Iron Ridge, face justice for your betrayal, or I take Moonfall apart stone by stone. I didn't betray anyone. I left an unbearable situation. You broke our bond. You broke it first. The words tore out of her. Every day you looked through me, every time you took credit for my work, every night you spent with her while I pretended not to notice. You broke us, Kael. I just made it official. You had everything. I had nothing. I had a title that meant nothing and a mate who hated me. Alara stepped forward. And you know what the worst part is? I would have stayed. If you'd given me even a fraction of the respect you gave everyone else. If you'd seen me for even a second, I would have stayed and been grateful for scraps. Then come back. We can... No. The word was final. I'm done begging for basic human decency. I'm done being invisible. You were never invisible, Kael said, and there was something raw in his voice. You were everywhere. In everything. I couldn't breathe without running into something you'd organized or fixed or managed. You were too much, Alara. Too competent. Too perfect. How was I supposed to compete with that? The confession stunned her into silence. You made me feel inadequate, Kael continued. Every day. My own mate making me look like a child playing at leadership. So you tore me down to build yourself up. I needed the pack to respect me, and I needed you to love me. Alara's voice cracked. But we don't always get what we need, so I left, and you need to let me go. I can't. Why not? Because if I do, it means Celine was right. It means I threw away something valuable for pride and ego, and I can't... He stopped, breathing hard. I can't live with being that person. Then change. Be better. But you don't get to do that with me as your redemption project. Alara softened her voice slightly. Let it end, Kael. Let me go. Take your army home. And look weak in front of every alpha I convinced to join this campaign? Or look strong enough to choose peace over pointless war? Kale stared at her. For a moment she saw the boy she'd once loved beneath the alpha's mask. Then Celine's voice carried across the valley from the ridge. Kale, don't listen to her lies! She'd escaped. Somehow, impossibly, she'd gotten free and rejoined Iron Ridge's forces. Kale's face hardened. If you won't come willingly, I'll take you by force. Then you'll have to go through all of us, Ronan said quietly. Kale's eyes met his. So be it. The parley ended. Both sides retreated. War was coming. Elara stood on Moonfall's wall as night fell, watching cookfires spring up across the enemy camps like stars. Tomorrow, wolves would die. Because of her. Second thoughts? Ronan asked, joining her. Thousands. Want to run? I won't stop you. Elara looked at him sharply. Is that what you want? I want you safe. If that means you leave, then yes. And if I stay? Then we fight. And win or lose, you'll have a home hereafter. How can you promise that? Because I'm Alpha. My word is law. He smiled faintly. And because I meant what I said earlier, about seeing you. Ronan, you don't have to say anything. Just know you have options. Always. He left her alone with her thoughts and the approaching dawn. Elara didn't sleep that night. She walked the walls, checked defensive positions, ran through contingencies, tried not to think about all the ways this could end in blood and ash. When dawn broke, Kael's army attacked. They came in waves, organized, relentless, clearly coordinated by someone who knew warfare. Celine's influence, obvious in every tactical decision. Moonfall held the initial assault. The valley's geography worked in their favor, channeling attackers into kill zones. But numbers mattered. For every enemy wolf that fell, 3 more took their place. Elara fought where she could, coordinated where she couldn't, and watched her new home burn. By midday, they were losing. Ronan called a strategic retreat to the inner defenses. We can't hold much longer, Jessa said, bleeding from a dozen wounds. I know, Ronan replied. If we had reinforcements, we don't. Elara stood apart, mind racing. There had to be a way. Some strategy they'd missed, some advantage they could leverage. Her eyes fell on the enemy command position. Kael and Celine directing the assault from safety. An idea formed. Desperate, dangerous, probably stupid. I need a fast runner, Elara said. For what? Ronan asked. A message. To Thornback Pack. Everyone stared at her. Are you insane? Garrett demanded. Thornback hates us. They hate everyone. But they hate being manipulated more. Elara pulled out a piece of paper, scribbling rapidly. Celine used mercenaries to destabilize the region, made it look random, but it affected Thornback's territory too. They just haven't connected the dots yet. So we give them the dots. Show them who's really responsible for the chaos. Let them decide if they want Celine's puppets controlling the region. That's a huge gamble, Ronan said. It's all we have. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Do it. The runner left within minutes. Now they just had to survive long enough for the message to matter. The fighting intensified. Elara lost track of time. Everything became blood and survival and the desperate hope that her gamble would pay off. She was helping evacuate wounded when she heard the horn. Different from Moonfall's, different from Iron Ridge's. Thornback. They crested the ridge like a nightmare made flesh, 50 wolves, battle-hardened and furious, but they didn't attack Moonfall. They hit Kael's flank. The battle became chaos. 3 packs tangled in violence, old grudges and new alliances colliding. Elara saw Kael trying to rally his forces, saw Celine screaming orders that no one followed, saw Thornback's Alpha make straight for Celine with murder in his eyes. The tide turned. Kael's coalition fractured. The smaller packs, seeing Thornback's involvement, decided survival trumped loyalty. They retreated, then fled. By nightfall, it was over. Moonfall stood battered but standing. Kael's army scattered to the winds. And Celine, Elara found her in this aftermath, surrounded by Thornback wolves. You manipulated us, Thornback's Alpha snarled. Used mercenaries to attack our territory, made us think it was random. I did what was necessary, Celine said, still defiant, even in defeat. You made it personal. Thornback's alpha shifted. Celine's scream was brief. Alara turned away before she saw the end. Some victories were too ugly to watch. She found Ronan organizing survivors, coordinating healers, doing all the things an alpha did after battle. He saw her and smiled. Tired, bloody, but genuine. You did it, he said. We did it. You turned the tide. Thornback wouldn't have come without your message. I just connected the dots. You saved us. He pulled her into an embrace, careful of her injuries. Thank you. Alara leaned into him, letting herself feel the relief. They'd survived. She'd survived. And for the first time in her life, she'd done it without making herself small. Kael appeared 2 hours later, alone, requesting parley. Ronan met him with Alara at his side. Kael looked broken, defeated. It's over, he said simply. Yes, Ronan agreed. Kael looked at Alara. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know. Will you? No. Alara's voice was gentle but firm. Go home, Kael. Rebuild. Be better. But do it without me. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, you were right. About everything. I know that too. Kael left without another word. Alara watched him go and felt nothing. No anger, no regret. Just peace. Is it really over? She asked Ronan quietly. The fighting? Yes. The rebuilding? He looked at the damaged valley. That's just beginning. Then let's begin. They turned together, walking back toward Moonfall. Toward home. And this time the word fit perfectly. Toward home. The word still carried weight 3 days after the battle, though now it came with the smell of smoke and the sound of hammering. Moonfall was rebuilding. Alara stood in what used to be the supply depot, now a charred skeleton of timber and ash. Around her, pack members sorted through salvageable materials, while others cleared debris. The work was backbreaking, exhausting, and somehow almost meditative. Nobody blamed her anymore. That was the strangest part. We need to prioritize shelter reconstruction over storage, Jessa said, appearing beside her with a smudge of soot across her cheek. Winter's not waiting for us to get organized. Agreed, but we need somewhere to store what food we have left, or it won't matter how good the shelters are. Alara pointed to a partially intact building 20 yards away. That structure's salvageable. We reinforce it, use it as temporary storage, and focus manpower on housing. Smart. Jessa made a note. I'll get a crew on it. As Jessa walked away, Garrett approached. He looked tired, older somehow. The battle had taken something from all of them. Alara, he said, can we talk? She braced herself. If this is about... It's an apology. He cut her off, then waited until she met his eyes. I was wrong. About you. About suggesting you leave. I let fear make me stupid, and I'm sorry. Alara blinked. Of all the things she'd expected, genuine contrition wasn't one of them. You were trying to protect the pack, she said carefully. I was trying to take the easy way out. There's a difference. Garrett shifted his weight. You saved us. That message to Thornback. That was brilliant. Risky as hell, but brilliant. I should have trusted you sooner. You didn't know me. I knew enough. I just didn't want to see it. He offered his hand. Fresh start? Alara shook it. Fresh start. After he left, she allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't forgiveness. That would take time. But it was progress. She spent the rest of the day coordinating reconstruction efforts, her mind constantly running calculations. Materials needed, labor allocation, priority lists. The familiar rhythm of logistics soothed something in her. By evening, she was exhausted and covered in ash. But the valley had visible progress. Foundations laid, support beams raised, the skeleton of recovery taking shape. Ronan found her as the sun was setting, standing on the ridge overlooking the valley. You should rest, he said. So should you. I will, after I make sure you do. He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. How are you holding up? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. Alara was quiet for a moment. I keep waiting for it to feel real. The fact that we won. That I'm still here. You're not just here. You're essential. Ronan's voice was matter of fact. The pack knows it. I know it. The question is, when will you know it? I'm working on it. Work faster. We need you confident, not second-guessing yourself. It should have sounded harsh. Instead, it sounded like faith. Ronan, Alara started, then hesitated. Say it. Why did you really keep me? At the beginning, when there were a dozen reasons to turn me away, why didn't you? He considered the question. Because I recognized something in you. The look of someone who'd been useful their entire life but never valued. I've seen that look before. He paused. In the mirror, actually. A long time ago. You? I wasn't born alpha. I earned it by being indispensable until the old alpha died, and the pack couldn't imagine anyone else leading. Ronan's smile was wry. Being necessary isn't the same as being wanted. I learned that the hard way. And now? Now I make sure everyone in my pack knows they're both necessary and wanted. He turned to face her fully. That includes you. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then a commotion from the valley broke it. They both turned to see a group approaching the main gates. Wolves Alara didn't recognize, carrying a white banner. More visitors, Ronan muttered. This should be interesting. They descended together to meet the newcomers. The delegation was small, 5 wolves, all wearing the insignia of Clearwater Pack, one of the neutrals that had stayed out of the conflict. Their leader, a woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, bowed slightly to Ronan. Alpha Vale, she said formally. I'm Mira Clearwater. We come seeking audience. Granted. What brings Clearwater to Moonfall? Curiosity, an opportunity. Mira's gaze swept the damaged valley. We heard about the battle, about how you turned certain defeat into victory with an unlikely alliance. You heard correctly. We also heard it was your strategist's doing. Mira's eyes found Alara, the defector from Iron Ridge who convinced Thornback to intervene. Alara said nothing, waiting. That kind of tactical thinking interests us, Mira continued. Clearwater has remained neutral for generations, but neutrality is becoming dangerous. The region is unstable. We need allies we can trust. You want an alliance with Moonfall, Ronan said. We want to learn if Moonfall is worth allying with. If your victory was luck or skill. Mira smiled slightly. And if your strategist is as good as the rumors claim, she's better, Ronan said simply. Prove it. We have a problem. A trade route that's been hit by raiders 3 times in the past month. We can't identify the source, can't predict the attacks, and we're losing resources we can't afford to lose. Mira looked at Alara. Solve it, and Clearwater will formalize an alliance with Moonfall. And if I can't? Alara asked. Then we know the rumors were exaggerated and we look elsewhere for security. It was a test, a challenge, and potentially a valuable alliance if Alara succeeded. Ronan looked at her, the question clear in his eyes. Alara nodded. I'll need details. Maps, timing of the raids, what was taken, everything you have. Mira smiled. I brought documentation, shall we? They spent the next 3 hours in the war room, Alara, Ronan, Mira, and Jessa, spreading maps and raid reports across the table. Alara studied the patterns with the same focus she'd once applied to Iron Ridge's problems. The raids seemed random at first glance. Different times, different targets, no consistent signature. But randomness was almost always an illusion. These locations, Alara said, marking them on the map, they're all within a day's travel of each other, but the raiders hit them weeks apart. Why the gaps? We assumed they were waiting for supplies to replenish, Mira said. Maybe, or maybe they're hitting multiple territories in rotation and you're only seeing the attacks on your routes. Alara traced a wider circle. Are any of your neighboring packs experiencing similar raids? Mira frowned. I don't know. We don't exactly share intelligence. You should. Because if I'm right, this isn't about Clearwater specifically. It's about destabilizing the entire region's trade network. To what end? Control. Someone wants to be the only reliable trade route, which means once everyone else is compromised, traders will pay premium prices for safe passage. Ronan leaned forward. Protection racket on a territorial scale. Exactly. And I'd bet my right arm the raids stop the moment someone offers to solve the problem for a fee. Mira's eyes widened. Blackridge Pack. They approached us 2 weeks ago offering trade protection services. We declined because their prices were extortionate. Let me guess. The raids intensified after you declined. Yes. Alara sat back. There's your answer. Blackridge is manufacturing the problem to sell the solution. That's... Mira stopped. That's actually brilliant, in a horrifying way. It's also provable, if we stake out your next likely target and catch them in the act. You can predict the next target? Alara studied the map. They're working a pattern, rotating through territories, spacing the attacks to avoid detection. Based on timing and location, your northern way station is due, probably within the next 3 days. You're certain, 70%, but it's the best lead you have. Mira looked at Ronan. If she's right, this solves months of problems. If she's wrong, we waste resources we don't have on a stakeout. She's right, Ronan said with absolute confidence. How can you be sure? Because she's never wrong about this kind of thing. It's actually annoying. Alara kicked him under the table. Mira laughed, a genuine sound that broke the tension. All right, we set the trap, but I'm coming with you. If this works, I want to see it firsthand. They assembled a team the next morning, 10 of Moonfall's best fighters, plus 5 from Clearwater. The Northern Way Station was a day's hard travel, a small fortified structure used by traders to rest and resupply. Currently, it was empty except for the supplies Clearwater had deliberately left as bait. They arrived with a day to spare and set up positions in the surrounding forest. Waiting. Watching. Alara hated stakeouts, all the tension of combat with none of the action. She crouched in the underbrush beside Jessa, trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Nervous? Jessa whispered. Terrified. What if I'm wrong? Then we wait longer. But you're not wrong. Jessa grinned. That confidence thing Ronan mentioned? You should try it. Working on it. The first day passed without incident. Night fell, and they rotated watches. Alara took the midnight shift with Ronan. They sat in silence for a while, watching the way station through gaps in the foliage. Can I ask you something? Alara said quietly. Always. When you look at me, what do you see? Ronan turned to study her. Why do you ask? Because Kael looked at me and saw a tool. Celine looked at me and saw a threat. I want to know what you see when you look at me. Honestly? Please. I see someone brilliant who doesn't believe in her own brilliance. Someone strong who thinks she's weak. Someone who survived things that would break most wolves and somehow came out kinder for it. He paused. And I see someone I'd trust with my pack, my territory, and my life, in that order. Alara's throat tightened. That's a lot of trust. You've earned it. Have I? Or are you just... Alara. His voice was gentle but firm. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Stop expecting people to see you the way Kael did. You're Moonfall now. We don't work like that. Old habits. Break them. He smiled. That's an order from your alpha. Pulling rank? Shamelessly. She was about to respond when movement caught her eye. The way station. Figures approaching from the east. She touched Ronan's arm, pointing. He saw them too. 6 wolves moving with professional stealth toward the supply building. Exactly as Alara had predicted. Ronan signaled the others. Positions held. Waited until the raiders were committed inside the way station loading supplies. Then struck. The raiders never had a chance. Surrounded, outnumbered, caught completely off guard. The fight was over in minutes. 3 raiders captured alive. The rest fled. Alara approached the prisoners as Jessa bound them. One of them, a scarred male, glared at her with pure hatred. You're Blackridge, Alara said. Not a question. He spat at her feet. Charming. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to confirm that Blackridge ordered these raids, and in exchange, we let you live long enough to deliver a message to your alpha. We don't talk to... You talk, or Thornback gets custody of you. I hear they're still angry about the raids on their territory. Alara crouched to his level. And they don't have our restraint. The raider's face paled. What message? That the protection racket is over. That any pack caught raiding will face a coalition response. That we're done being divided and exploited. Alara stood. Think he'll get it? He'll get it. Good. Now start talking. By dawn, they had full confessions and evidence of Blackridge's scheme stretching back months. Mira looked at Alara with open admiration. You were right, about everything. I was 70% sure. That's more certainty than I've had about anything in years. Mira extended her hand. Clearwater accepts the alliance. Formal terms to be negotiated, but consider us allies. Ronan shook her hand. Moonfall accepts. Welcome to the coalition. Coalition? Mira raised an eyebrow. If Blackridge is running rackets, others might be too. We should formalize cooperation, share intelligence, coordinate responses. Ronan looked at Alara. Assuming our strategist agrees? A regional coalition makes sense. Harder to pick off packs individually if we're unified. Then let's make it happen. The journey back to Moonfall felt different, lighter. Alara had proven herself not just to Moonfall, but to outsiders, had demonstrated value beyond logistics and paperwork. When they arrived, word had already spread. Pack members greeted them with cheers, actual celebration. For Alara, it was disorienting. She wasn't used to recognition, wasn't used to being the hero instead of the background support. Get used to it, Jessa said, reading her expression. You're kind of a big deal now. I just did the math. You did brilliant math that saved lives and forged alliances. Take the win, Alara. Maybe she would. Maybe it was time. Over the following weeks, the coalition took shape. Clearwater brought 3 more neutral packs into the fold. Thornback, surprisingly, agreed to intelligence sharing in exchange for first crack at any captured raiders. Even some of Kael's former allies quietly reached out, testing the waters. Moonfall became the center of a growing network, not through conquest, but through cooperation, and Alara was at the heart of it. She coordinated information sharing, analyzed threat patterns, helped smaller packs strengthen their defenses, built the infrastructure for something bigger than any single territory. People started calling her the Architect. Not officially, but the nickname stuck. Ronan found it hilarious. The Architect of Moonfall, he said one evening, reviewing alliance proposals. Has a nice ring to it. I build spreadsheets, not monuments. You built this. He gestured to the stack of alliance agreements. A network that's changing how packs operate in this entire region. That's a monument, Alara, just not made of stone. She looked at the documents, formal agreements, trade terms, mutual defense pacts, things she'd dreamed of implementing at Iron Ridge but never had the authority to execute. Here, she had that authority, and the freedom to use it. It feels strange, she admitted. Being visible, being valued. Feels good though, right? Yeah, it really does. The knock on the door interrupted them. Jessa entered, her expression troubled. We have a problem. Runner just arrived from Iron Ridge. Alara's stomach dropped. What now? They're requesting aid. Formal request following proper coalition protocols. Jessa handed over a sealed letter. It's from Nina. Alara broke the seal, reading quickly. Her friend's handwriting was shaky, desperate. Alara, I know I have no right to ask, but we're in trouble. Real trouble. Food stores are critically low. Kael's leadership is fractured. Wolves are leaving. We're starving, and winter isn't even half over. Please. If you ever cared about anyone here, please help. Nina. The room was silent. It's a trap, Garrett said from the doorway. He'd arrived without Alara noticing. Has to be. Nina might not know it's a trap. But Kael? Celine's people? Garrett shook his head. This reeks of manipulation. Alara reread the letter. Nina's desperation felt genuine, but Garrett wasn't wrong to be suspicious. What do you want to do? Ronan asked quietly. I don't know. Alara set the letter down. Part of me wants to help. These are people I lived with for 12 years. But another part wants to watch them suffer for how they treated you, Jessa finished. That's human, also valid. But not helpful, Alara said. No, not helpful. Ronan leaned back in his chair. This is your call, Alara. They're your former pack. Whatever you decide, Moonfall supports it. The weight of that trust settled over her. She could help Iron Ridge and prove she was better than their worst assumptions. Or she could refuse and prove they were right to cast her out. Both options felt like losing, unless there was a third way. What if we help? Alara said slowly. But on our terms. Conditional aid that addresses the root problems, not just the symptoms. Explain, Ronan said. Iron Ridge is failing because of poor leadership and worse planning. Sending supplies treats starvation but doesn't fix incompetence. Alara stood, moving to the map wall. But if we offer aid in exchange for structural reforms, better resource management, coordinated leadership, maybe even joining the coalition, then we solve the actual problem. Kael would never accept conditions, Garrett said. Kael might not have a choice. If his pack is desperate enough, they'll force him to accept, or replace him with someone who will. Jessa whistled low. You want to regime change Iron Ridge. I want to stabilize them. If that means new leadership, so be it. Ronan studied her carefully. This isn't about revenge? No. It's about preventing collapse. An imploding pack on our border creates problems for everyone. Refugees, instability, power vacuums that someone worse than Kael could fill. Alara met his eyes. And yes, part of me wants to prove I can save the pack that threw me away. Is that petty? It's human, Ronan smiled. Let's do it, but carefully. I'm sending a delegation with the supplies. You, me, Jessa, and enough fighters that no one gets ideas. Agreed. They assembled the aid convoy over the next 2 days. Food, medicine, basic supplies, enough to make a difference but not enough to solve everything. The message was clear. This was a down payment, not charity. The journey to Iron Ridge felt surreal. Alara had left this territory broken and alone. Now she was returning with an alpha at her side and an alliance at her back. The border guards recognized her immediately. Their shock was almost comical. I need to see Kael, Alara said. Tell him Moonfall's delegation is here to discuss his aid request. They were escorted to the main lodge, the same building where Alara had been publicly humiliated months ago. The pack center looked worse than she remembered. Buildings in disrepair. Wolves thin and hollow-eyed. The whole place felt diminished. Kael waited in the great hall with what remained of his council. He looked terrible, gaunt, exhausted, defeated. Nina stood behind him and her face lit up when she saw Alara. You came, Nina breathed. I came. Alara turned to Kael. You requested aid. We did. His voice was rough. We're in a difficult position. You're starving because your logistics collapsed and you spent resources on a pointless war. Alara's tone was matter-of-fact, not cruel. But we're here to help, conditionally. What conditions? First, the supplies we brought are immediate relief only. Long-term stability requires structural changes to how Iron Ridge operates. Kael's jaw tightened. You want to dictate how I run my pack? I want to prevent your pack from dying. There's a difference. Alara pulled out a document. These are the recommended reforms. Better resource management, coordinated leadership councils, trade agreements with the coalition, and most importantly, actual strategists making strategic decisions instead of being ignored. You want me to hand over control. I want you to share it with people who know what they're doing. Alara met his eyes. You're a good alpha in some ways, Kael. Inspiring, charismatic. But you can't do everything, and pretending you can is killing your pack. The silence was heavy. Finally, Nina stepped forward. She's right, Kael. We've been dying slowly since she left. Everyone knows it. Pride won't feed us through winter. You want me to humiliate myself? We want you to save us, another council member said quietly. Whatever that takes. Kael looked around the room, seeing the desperation in every face. When he looked back at Alara, something in his expression had changed. Resignation, maybe. Or acceptance. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. Moonfall provides aid and expertise. You implement reforms and join the coalition. We station a small team here to help with logistics and planning, not to control, but to advise and train. And if I refuse, then we leave the supplies, wish you luck, and watch from a distance while Iron Ridge tears itself apart. Alara's voice softened. I don't want that, Kael. Despite everything, I don't want to see these people suffer. Why? After what we did to you? Because I'm not you. I don't punish entire communities for the failures of their leadership, she paused. And because Nina asked. She was a friend when I had none. I owe her this. Nina's eyes filled with tears. Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right, we accept your terms. The relief in the room was palpable. One more thing, Ronan said, speaking for the first time. This arrangement requires good faith from both sides. Any attempt to undermine the reforms, any hostility toward our advisors, and the agreement ends. Understood? Understood, Cale said. Good, then let's begin. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took weeks of hard work, difficult conversations, and more than a few setbacks. But slowly, Iron Ridge stabilized. Alara worked with Nina and the council to restructure supply chains, taught them the systems she'd once tried to implement and been ignored for suggesting. This time, people listened, because this time, survival depended on it. Cale kept his distance, which suited everyone. But Alara noticed he was changing too, taking advice, admitting uncertainty, actually leading instead of just commanding. Maybe war had taught him something after all. One evening, 3 weeks into the mission, Alara was reviewing inventory logs when Kael appeared in her workspace, the same shed she'd once occupied. Can we talk? He asked. Alara gestured to a chair. Sure. He sat, awkward and uncertain. I owe you an apology. A real one, not just the words I said at the parley. Okay? I was cruel to you, dismissive. I took credit for your work and blamed you for my failures. I let Celine poison the pack against you because it was easier than admitting I was the problem. Cale's voice was raw with honesty. You deserved so much better, and I'm sorry. Alara studied him. The apology felt genuine, hard-earned. I appreciate that, she said finally. Do you forgive me? I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't instant, Kael. You hurt me deeply, but... She paused. I don't hate you, and I'm glad you're learning. That counts for something. Will you ever come back? To Iron Ridge? No. My home is Moonfall now. He nodded, accepting. For what it's worth, they're lucky to have you. I know, Alara said simply. Cale laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. You've changed. I stopped waiting for permission to value myself. Turns out that changes everything. After he left, Alara sat in the quiet shed, feeling the weight of the conversation settle. She'd spent so long wanting Kael's approval, his recognition, his love. Now, having it offered freely, she realized she didn't need it anymore. She was whole without it. The mission wrapped up 2 weeks later. Iron Ridge was stable, reforms were implemented, and a Moonfall advisor team stayed behind to ensure continuity. Nina hugged Alara at the border, crying openly. Thank you, she whispered, for coming back, for helping when you had every reason not to. Take care of yourself, Nina, and if you ever want to visit Moonfall, you're welcome, always. I might take you up on that. The journey home felt victorious. Alara had returned to the place that broke her and left it better than she found it. Not for Kael, not for redemption, but because it was the right thing to do, and because she could. Moonfall welcomed them back with celebration, a feast, music, genuine joy. Alara stood at the edge of the gathering, watching her pack celebrate, and realized something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't the outsider anymore, wasn't the useful tool or the invisible backbone. She was pack. Truly, completely pack. Ronan found her, as he always did. Not joining the celebration, he asked. Just taking it in, appreciating it. You should. You earned this. The alliance, the respect, all of it. We earned it. Moonfall earned it. Take the compliment, Alara. She smiled. Fine. I earned it. Better. He paused. There's something I want to discuss with you. Sounds serious. It is. Walk with me? They left the gathering, walking the familiar path to the ridge overlooking the valley. The view had changed since that first night. Buildings rebuilt, structures reinforced. The valley looked stronger, permanent. The coalition is growing faster than expected, Ronan began. We've gone from 3 allied packs to 8 in 2 months. By spring, we'll probably have 15. That's good, right? It's excellent. It's also complicated. Coordinating 8 packs requires more infrastructure than we have. More organization, more oversight, more leadership, Alara finished. Exactly. Which is why the Council and I have been discussing creating a formal coalition governance structure, with representatives from each pack and a central coordinator. Makes sense. Who did you have in mind for coordinator? Ronan looked at her directly. You. Alara's brain stuttered. What? You built this coalition. You understand how all the pieces fit together. You have the trust of every allied pack and the tactical mind to keep everything running. Ronan's voice was steady, certain. You're the obvious choice. I'm a defector who's been with Moonfall for less than 6 months. You're the architect who created something unprecedented, and everyone knows it. Ronan, I can't. Yes, you can. The question is, will you? Alara stared at the valley, mind racing. Coalition coordinator. Official authority over an alliance of multiple packs. Real power. Real recognition. Everything she'd wanted at Iron Ridge, offered freely. What would this mean for Moonfall? She asked. You'd still be pack, still be home, but your responsibilities would extend beyond our territory. You'd be representing the coalition, not just one pack. And you're okay with that? I'm more than okay with it. I'm proud. Ronan smiled. You came here broken and desperate. Now you're about to change how this entire region operates. That's remarkable, Alara. I haven't said yes. But you will. Because it's what you were meant to do. He was right. She knew it. This was the culmination of everything, all the work, the pain, the fighting to be seen and valued. A position where she wouldn't just be useful. She'd be essential, visible, powerful, on her own terms. All right, Alara said. I'll do it. Ronan's smile was brilliant. The council will be pleased. We're announcing it tomorrow at the Alliance Summit. Tomorrow? That's fast, I know. But every allied pack is sending representatives to Moonfall for the first official coalition gathering. Perfect timing to formalize the structure. No pressure. You'll be fine. You're always fine when it counts. They stood together on the ridge, watching the valley settle into night. Alara felt something unfamiliar rising in her chest. Not fear or doubt or the desperate need to prove herself. Just quiet, solid confidence. She'd earned this, not through manipulation or politics or making herself small. Through competence, through courage, through refusing to accept that being undervalued was inevitable. Ronan? She said quietly. Yeah? Thank you. For seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for being worth seeing. The next day, representatives from 8 allied packs gathered in Moonfall's newly rebuilt Great Hall. The room buzzed with conversation, speculation, hope. Ronan called the assembly to order. We're here to formalize the coalition that's been growing organically over the past months, to create structure where there was improvisation, and to acknowledge the wolf who made all of this possible. He gestured to Alara. Alara Vance came to Moonfall as a defector with nothing but knowledge and determination. In 6 months, she's proven herself not just to one pack, but to all of us. She's forged alliances, prevented conflicts, and built something none of us could have imagined alone. The representatives nodded, murmuring agreement. Which is why, with the Council's full support, I'm proposing Alara as the Coalition's first coordinator, a central leader with authority to coordinate defense, manage trade, and represent our collective interests. Mira stood immediately. Clearwater supports this appointment, without question. Thornback's representative grunted agreement. The architect saved our territory from Blackridge's scheme. She's earned our trust. One by one, the other packs voiced support, until only one remained silent, a newcomer pack, small and cautious. The representative, a middle-aged woman named Senna, stood slowly. I mean no disrespect, Senna said carefully, but Coordinator Vance was exiled from her original pack. How do we know she won't abandon us if things get difficult? The room went tense. Alara stood, meeting Senna's eyes calmly. I wasn't exiled. I left. There's a difference. I left because staying meant accepting abuse and invisibility. I left because I valued myself enough to demand better. She paused. And I understand your concern. Trust needs to be earned. So here's my promise. I'll serve this coalition with the same dedication I gave Iron Ridge, but with the respect I was denied there. I'll fight for every pack equally. I'll prioritize collective good over individual gain. And if I ever fail to meet that standard, you have my permission to replace me. Senna studied her for a long moment, then nodded. That's good enough for me. My pack supports the appointment. Relief flooded the room. Ronan smiled. Then it's unanimous. Alara Vance, by the authority of the allied packs, I name you Coalition Coordinator. May your wisdom guide us and your strength protect us. The hall erupted in applause. Alara stood there, overwhelmed and grounded all at once. This was real. This was happening. She'd gone from invisible backbone to acknowledged leader, from outcast to architect, from nothing to everything. And she'd done it without compromise, without making herself smaller, without accepting that her worth was debatable. As the celebration continued around her, Jessa appeared at her side. "How's it feel?" Jessa asked. "Terrifying. Amazing. Right. Good. Because you're stuck with us now. No backing out. Wouldn't dream of it." That night, after the representatives departed and the celebrations wound down, Alara found herself back on the ridge. The valley spread below her, lights twinkling in rebuilt homes, pack members moving peacefully through their evening routines. Home. Not just a place, a feeling, a truth. She heard Ronan approach before he spoke. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it. Stop deflecting. You did this. Own it." Alara smiled. "Fine, I did it. Happy? Very." He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "What are you thinking about?" "How different everything is. 6 months ago, I was walking through this forest expecting to die. Now I'm here, building something that might actually matter. It already matters. To 8 packs, thousands of wolves. That's not might. That's is." "I know. It's just—" She paused, searching for words. "For so long, I thought my value was in being useful, being needed. Now I'm learning it's okay to be wanted too. More than okay, essential." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the valley settle into peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Coalition management, political complications, the endless work of building something lasting. But tonight, Alara let herself simply be. Not the outcast, not the architect, not even the coordinator. Just Alara. Pack member, friend, leader, seen, valued, home. And finally, after a lifetime of being invisible, that was more than enough. It was everything. It was everything. And like most things worth having, it came with a price. The Coalition's first real test came 6 weeks after Alara's appointment, in the form of a crisis she should have seen coming. Border disputes. With 8 packs unified under one alliance, the old territorial boundaries suddenly mattered less, which meant wolves started questioning why certain lines existed at all, why Clearwater controlled a water source that Riverbend needed, why Thornback claimed hunting grounds that bordered 3 other territories, small grievances, festering into real problems. Alara stood in her office, a proper office now, in a newly constructed coalition headquarters built at the center of Moonfalls Valley, staring at a map covered in dispute markers, 14 active conflicts, and counting. "This is getting out of hand," Jessa said, reviewing the latest complaint. "Riverbend and Clearwater are 2 days from actual violence over fishing rights." "I know." Alara rubbed her temples. "We need a framework. Something that addresses territorial claims fairly without dismantling the whole alliance." "You mean like laws?" "I mean like agreed-upon principles that everyone consents to follow." Alara pulled out a blank sheet of paper. "Property rights, resource sharing, dispute resolution, the foundation of actual governance. You want to create a government. I want to create a system where wolves don't kill each other over a creek." Alara looked up. "Is that government? Maybe. But it's also survival." Jessa whistled low. "The allied packs aren't going to like giving up autonomy." "They don't have to. Each pack still governs internally. We're just creating shared rules for interactions between packs." Alara started sketching a proposal. "Think of it as a treaty with teeth. And who enforces it?" "We do. The Coalition. Together." It was ambitious, possibly insane, definitely necessary. Alara spent the next week drafting what she called the Compact, a set of principles governing interpack relations, resource disputes, and mutual defense. She consulted with every allied alpha, incorporating feedback, finding compromises. The document that emerged was imperfect, but workable. She presented it at the next Coalition Summit. "What you're proposing is unprecedented," Mira said, reading through the Compact. "Binding agreements that limit pack sovereignty." "Not limit. Define," Alara corrected. "Right now, every dispute is handled by whoever has more fighters. This creates a structure where disputes are handled by consensus and law. And if a pack violates the Compact, then the Coalition responds. Sanctions first, force if necessary." Thornback's representative, a grizzled alpha named Carr, laughed. You want us to police each other? I want us to hold each other accountable. There's a difference. What happens when Moonfall violates the compact? Another alpha asked. Who holds you accountable? The same process applies to everyone. No exceptions, including Moonfall, including me. Alara met each alpha's eyes in turn. This only works if we're all equal under the rules we create. The room fell silent as the alphas considered. Finally, Ronan stood. Moonfall supports the compact. We'll be the first to ratify it. Mira nodded. Clearwater as well. One by one, the alphas agreed. Not because they loved the idea, but because the alternative was chaos. The compact was formally adopted 2 weeks later, with all 15 allied packs. The coalition had grown again, signing in a ceremony that felt historic even as it happened. Alara watched the signatures accumulate and felt the weight of what they'd created. Not just an alliance, a system, a framework that could outlast any single leader or pack, something permanent. But permanence attracted attention. 3 days after the compact signing, scouts reported movement at the northern borders, a large force approaching under unknown banners. Ronan called an emergency meeting. We've identified them, Jessa reported grimly. Coalition of packs from the northern highlands, led by an alpha named Davos Crane. They're not happy about our alliance. Why? Alara asked. Because we're disrupting the old power balance. Before the coalition, packs could be played against each other, manipulated, exploited. Now we're unified. That makes certain interests nervous. What kind of interest? The kind that profit from instability. Jessa pulled out intelligence reports. Davos runs what amounts to a mercenary operation, hires his wolves out to wealthy packs for raids, enforcement, intimidation. The coalition threatens his business model. Ronan leaned back. So he's here to break us up. Or make an example of us. Show potential clients that unified packs aren't worth the trouble. Alara studied the reports. Davos had 40 wolves, all experienced fighters. The coalition could field more, but coordinating multiple packs took time. Time they might not have. What does he want? Alara asked. To talk, apparently. Sent a formal request for parley with the coalition's leadership. It's a trap, Garrett said immediately. Probably. But we can't refuse without looking weak. Ronan looked at Alara. This is your call, your coordinator. All eyes turned to her. Alara felt the pressure, but also something else. Certainty. We accept the parley, but on our terms. Neutral ground, equal numbers, and every allied pack sends a representative. He wants to intimidate the coalition? Let's show him what a unified coalition looks like. Ronan smiled. I like it. Make the arrangements. The parley was set for 3 days later, at the same neutral clearing where Alara had once faced Kael. The difference this time was staggering. Alara arrived with Ronan and 15 other pack representatives, every allied alpha or their chosen delegate. 40 fighters backed them up, standing in perfect formation. They looked like an army, because they were. Davos Crane emerged from the opposite tree line with his wolves, and Alara got her first look at the man threatening her coalition. He was massive, easily the largest wolf she'd ever seen, with silver hair and scars that spoke of decades of violence. His eyes were cold, calculating, a predator who'd never met prey that fought back. So, Davos said, his voice carrying across the clearing, this is the famous coalition. Impressive staging. We don't stage, Alara replied. We coordinate. There's a difference. His eyes found her, assessing. You're the one they call the architect. Smaller than I expected. I get that a lot. Davos smiled, sharp and dangerous. I'll make this simple. Disband your alliance. Return to independent packs. And I'll consider not burning your territories to teach you the cost of disrupting regional stability. That's your offer? Mira asked incredulously. That's my courtesy warning. What happens next depends on how smart you are. Alara stepped forward. Here's our counteroffer. Take your mercenaries and leave. Peacefully. And we'll forget you made threats you can't back up. Davos laughed. Can't back up, child. I've broken stronger alliances than yours. All it takes is the right pressure in the right place. Try it, Ronan said quietly. See what happens. Oh, I will. But first I'm curious. Davos focused on Alara. What makes you think 15 disparate packs will actually fight for each other? The moment real blood is spilled, your alliance collapses. Everyone knows that. Everyone's wrong. Am I? Let's test it. Davos gestured, and one of his wolves stepped forward, dragging a prisoner. Ilara's blood went cold. Nina. Her friend was bound, gagged, bleeding from fresh wounds. We found this one traveling between territories, Davos said casually, carrying coalition correspondence. Seemed like a good test case. He drew a knife. I'm going to kill her, and we'll see if your alliance is willing to go to war over one insignificant wolf from a pack that isn't even technically allied. Iron Ridge is under coalition protection, Alara said, her voice deadly calm despite the rage building inside her. Touch her, and find out what that means. Big words from someone who abandoned Iron Ridge herself. Why would you care about? Because she's my friend, and because the coalition protects our people. All of them. Prove it. Alara looked at the assembled alphas, saw them watching, waiting for her decision. This was the moment. The test Davos had engineered. Fight and potentially lose wolves over someone from a peripheral pack, or back down and prove him right. Alphas, Alara said clearly. Davos Crane has violated the compact by threatening a wolf under coalition protection. I'm invoking Article 7, Collective Defense. Those who stand with the coalition step forward. For one terrible second, no one moved. Then Ronan stepped forward. Moonfall stands with the coalition. Mira followed. Clearwater stands. Carr grinning. Thornback stands, and we've been itching for a good fight. One by one, every alpha stepped forward. 15 packs. United. Davos's smile faltered. Last chance, Alara said. Release her. Live, or face all of us. Davos looked at his 40 wolves, then at the 80-plus coalition fighters arrayed against him. The math wasn't in his favor. You're bluffing, he said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Try me. The standoff stretched impossibly long. Finally, Davos shoved Nina forward. She stumbled and Jessa caught her. This isn't over, Davos growled. Yes, Alara said. It is. You came here to prove alliances are fragile. Instead, you proved ours isn't. Go back to your mercenary work, Crane, but stay out of coalition territory. Next time we won't be this polite. Davos stared at her with pure hatred, but he retreated, his wolves falling back. The coalition held formation until they were gone. Then Alara's legs nearly gave out. Jessa steadied her while Ronan cut Nina's bonds. You okay? He asked quietly. No, but we won. You won. That was all you. Nina threw her arms around Alara, sobbing. You came for me, even after everything. You're my friend. I'll always come for you. The alphas gathered around them, and Alara saw something new in their faces. Not just respect, trust, real, solid trust. That was a risk, Mira said. If we'd backed down, we didn't, Carr interrupted, because the coordinator was right. We protect our people. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us strong, another alpha agreed. Alara looked at the united packs and felt something crystallize in her chest. They'd passed the test. Not Davos's test. He was irrelevant, but the real test, whether the coalition was a political convenience or something deeper. They'd proven it was deeper. Word of the standoff spread fast. Within weeks, 3 more packs requested to join the coalition, not out of fear, but because they saw what unified strength looked like. The alliance grew to 18 packs, then 20, and with growth came new challenges. The coalition needed permanent infrastructure, courts to handle disputes, trade administrators, defense coordinators, the bureaucracy of governance that Alara both loved and loathed. She spent months building systems, training administrators, creating the framework for something that could survive without her. Because she'd learned that lesson at Iron Ridge. If only one person knew how everything worked, the whole thing collapsed when they left. This had to be bigger than her. 6 months after the Davos incident, Ronan found her in the archives late at night, reviewing treaty proposals. You're going to work yourself to death, he said. I'm fine. You're exhausted. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Alara couldn't remember. There's too much to do. There's always too much to do. That's why we have staff now. Delegate Alara. I tried delegating, then I had to fix everything because they didn't understand the underlying principles. So teach them, train them, make them understand. Ronan sat beside her. You built something amazing, but you can't run it alone forever. That's not sustainable. I know, She stopped, frustrated. I'm afraid if I let go, it'll fall apart, like Iron Ridge did. Iron Ridge fell apart because one person held everything together through force of will, and then that person left. You're building something different, systems, institutions, things that don't depend on any single wolf. He paused. Trust what you created. It's strong enough. Was it? Alara wanted to believe that. I'll try, she said finally. Good. Starting now. You're taking tomorrow off. I can't. That's an order from your alpha. You can't order me. I'm coalition coordinator. Fine. It's a strongly worded suggestion from someone who cares about you and doesn't want to watch you burn out. The phrasing made her pause. Someone who cares about me? Ronan met her eyes. Yes, Alara, I care about you. Have for a while now. I was just waiting for you to notice. Her heart did something complicated. I noticed. I just didn't think that I'd want someone like you. Someone brilliant and stubborn and who argues with every decision I make. Something like that. Well, I do. Very much, but he held up a hand before she could respond. You don't have to decide anything right now. I'm just putting it out there. When you're ready, if you're ready, I'm here. He stood, leaving before she could formulate a response. Alara sat in the quiet archives, mind spinning. Ronan wanted her, not as a strategist or tool or maid of political convenience, just her. The idea was terrifying and wonderful, and so far from anything she'd imagined when she first stumbled into Moonfall territory that she almost laughed. She'd come here broken, expecting death or rejection. Instead, she'd found home, purpose, and now, maybe, something more. Spring arrived with melting snow and new possibilities. The coalition held its first annual gathering, not a crisis meeting, but a celebration. Trade fairs, cultural exchanges, pack members mixing freely across territorial lines. Alara walked through the festival grounds, watching wolves from 20 different packs interact peacefully, and felt pride so fierce it hurt. They'd done this. Built something better than the old system of constant conflict and manipulation. Impressive, isn't it? She turned to find Kael standing nearby, looking healthier than she'd seen him in years. What are you doing here? Alara asked, surprised. Nina invited me, said I should see what real leadership looks like. His smile was self-deprecating. She wasn't subtle. She never is. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. I'm glad you came, Alara said finally. How's Iron Ridge? Better. Still rebuilding, but we're stable. Your advisors helped with that. Kael looked at her. I never thanked you properly, for coming back when we needed help, for not letting us collapse out of spite. You're welcome. You could have. Would have been justified. Maybe, but spite doesn't build anything. It just burns. Alara paused. I'm glad you're doing better, Kael. Genuinely. Yeah, me too. He hesitated. I heard about you and Ronan. The rumor mill is active. Alara felt her face heat. There's no me and Ronan. Yet. But there will be. Anyone with eyes can see how he looks at you. Kael's expression turned serious. He's good for you. Better than I ever was. Kael, it's true, and I'm glad. You deserve someone who sees you. He smiled. For what it's worth, I see you now too. I'm just several years too late. We all grow at our own pace. Diplomatic answer. I'm a diplomat now. Kind of comes with the job. They parted on good terms, and Alara realized something had shifted. The old wound had scarred over. Not forgotten, but healed enough that it didn't hurt anymore. She found Ronan at the coalition headquarters, reviewing security arrangements. Can we talk? She asked. He looked up, reading something in her expression. Of course. Here or somewhere private? Private would be good. They walked to the ridge, their ridge, where so many important conversations had happened. So, Ronan said when they stopped, what's on your mind? You, me. This thing we've been dancing around for months. I told you, no pressure. I'm not feeling pressured. I'm feeling ready. Alara turned to face him fully. You asked me once what I saw when I looked at you. Want to know the answer? Always. I see someone strong enough to share power, smart enough to admit uncertainty, kind enough to value people over politics, someone who saw me when I was invisible and chose to make space for me to be seen. She took a breath. I see home, Ronan. Not the place. The person. His smile was brilliant. That's quite an answer. It's the truth. Good. Because here's my truth. You scare me a little. Your competence, your dedication, the way you see patterns no one else notices. But you also make me want to be better, smarter, kinder. He stepped closer. I don't know what this looks like, building something personal while leading together. But I want to try. So do I. Then let's try. He kissed her, gentle and careful, like she was something precious. Alara kissed him back and felt everything click into place. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or destiny, just right, simple and right. When they broke apart, Ronan was grinning. Been wanting to do that for months. Why didn't you? Timing. You needed to find yourself first. Become who you were always meant to be. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I didn't want to be a distraction from that. You're not a distraction. You're a partner. Best thing I've ever been called. They stood together on the ridge, watching the valley celebrate below. The coalition. Their coalition. Built from nothing but determination and the refusal to accept that things had to stay broken. 2 months later, the coalition faced its biggest test yet. A massive pack from the Western Territories, one of the old powers that had ruled through fear and dominance for generations, challenged the alliance. Not through parley or negotiation, through direct assault on a border pack. The coalition mobilized immediately. 20 packs moving as one coordinated force, following the defense protocols Alara had spent months developing. The battle was brutal but decisive. The Western pack, expecting to face scattered resistance, instead met unified opposition. They were routed within hours and driven back to their own territory. The message was clear. The coalition protected its own. Always. In the aftermath, something unexpected happened. The defeated pack requested to join the alliance. Why? Alara asked their alpha, a scarred female named Vex, who'd built a reputation on ruthlessness. Because I'm tired, Vex said bluntly. Tired of constantly fighting for scraps, tired of maintaining dominance through fear. Your coalition offers something different, stability, protection, actual peace. She paused. That's worth more than pride. The coalition accepted them, with conditions and probationary status. But the precedent was set. Power wasn't about dominance anymore. It was about cooperation. One by one, the old territorial powers realized the landscape had shifted. Some resisted. Most adapted. Within a year, the coalition encompassed 35 packs, nearly half the region. Alara stood before the assembly, now held in a massive amphitheater built specifically for coalition gatherings, and marveled at what they'd created. 3 years ago, she said, her voice carrying across the crowd, I walked into Moonfall territory expecting to die. Instead, I found possibility, the chance to build something better than the old ways of constant conflict. The assembled wolves listened intently. Today we're not just surviving, we're thriving. Trade flows freely. Disputes are settled by law, not bloodshed. Packs that once raided each other now celebrate together. She paused. But we can't get comfortable. The work of building and maintaining peace is never finished. It requires constant effort, constant vigilance, constant choice. So I'm asking you to choose. Every day. Choose cooperation over isolation. Choose dialogue over violence. Choose the hard work of unity over the easy path of division. Alara looked across the sea of faces. Because that's what makes us strong. Not our numbers. Not our fighters. Our choice to stand together. The applause was thunderous. After the assembly, representatives from distant territories approached with requests to join. The coalition's influence was spreading beyond anything Alara had imagined. You're changing the world, Jessa said, finding her later. I'm just connecting dots. You're rewriting how packs interact. That's world-changing, Alara. Maybe it was. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. That night, Ronan found her in their shared quarters. They'd made it official months ago, a bond formed by choice rather than obligation. Big day, he said. Every day is big lately. True. He pulled her close. But you handled it perfectly, as always. I was terrified the whole time. Couldn't tell. You seemed confident. I'm learning to fake it. No, Ronan said seriously. You're learning to own it. There's a difference. He was right. Somewhere along the way, the fake confidence had become real. The act of pretending she belonged had transformed into actually belonging. I've been thinking, Alara said quietly. Dangerous. We should formalize succession planning. Create a council structure that can operate without me. So if something happens, nothing's going to happen. Ronan, we lead a coalition that makes powerful enemies nervous. Something could always happen. I need to know the system survives without me. He was quiet for a moment. You're thinking about legacy. I'm thinking about responsibility. I built this. I need to make sure it lasts. It will. Because you built it on solid foundations, not personality. Ronan kissed her forehead. But yes, let's formalize succession, just to be safe. They spent the next months doing exactly that, creating a coalition council with representatives from every region, drafting constitutional documents, training the next generation of coordinators, building something that could outlast any single leader. 2 years after Alara's first appearance as coordinator, the coalition held elections for council positions. It was unprecedented, wolves choosing their representatives through voting rather than combat or inheritance. The results were overwhelming. Every elected representative supported continuing the alliance, expanding it, strengthening it. The coalition had become permanent. Alara stood before the new council at their inauguration, feeling the weight of what they'd accomplished. 5 years ago, she began, I was invisible, a tool used and discarded. Today I stand before elected leaders who represent 42 unified packs. That transformation isn't about me. It's about all of us choosing to build something better. The council members, wolves from diverse packs, backgrounds, and territories, listened with respect earned rather than demanded. My role as coordinator has been to create systems that don't need me, to build institutions that survive individual leaders. I believe we've done that. Alara paused. Which is why I'm announcing that after this term, I won't seek reappointment. Shocked murmurs rippled through the hall. Ronan, sitting in the front row, looked surprised but not upset. The coalition needs fresh perspective, Alara continued. New ideas, leaders who weren't shaped by the old conflicts. I'll remain available as an advisor, but it's time for new voices to guide what we've built. You're stepping down? Mira asked, standing. Why? Because the measure of good leadership isn't making yourself indispensable. It's making yourself unnecessary. Alara smiled. I came here with nothing, built something that changed how we live. Now I want to trust it to continue without me. That's the final test. The vote to accept her decision was close but passed. Alara would serve out her current term, another year, then transition to an advisory role. It felt right, complete. That evening, she and Ronan walked the ridge one final time as sitting leaders. No regrets? He asked. None. This was never about holding power. It was about using it to build something lasting. Mission accomplished, then. Yeah, I think it was. They stood in silence, watching the valley where it all began. What will you do? Ronan asked. After you step down? I don't know. Maybe travel. See what other regions are doing. Spread ideas. Maybe just rest. Alara leaned into him. What about you? I'll serve out my term as Alpha. Then maybe I'll step back too. Let new leadership emerge. He smiled. We could travel together. See the world beyond coalition borders. I'd like that. It's a plan then. Alara's final year as coordinator passed quickly, filled with the work of transition and training. When the day came to officially hand over authority to her successor, a brilliant young wolf named Tessa, who'd risen through coalition ranks on merit, Alara felt peace. The ceremony was simple but moving. Tessa took the oath, accepted the position, and the coalition continued without missing a beat, because it was built to last. Afterward, Alara walked through the valley one more time, seeing 5 years of change crystallized into permanent structures, the headquarters, the amphitheater, the trade centers, the schools where young wolves learned cooperation instead of competition. Her legacy. Not monuments to her name, but systems that would outlive her. Nina found her near the old supply depot, rebuilt and thriving. How does it feel? Nina asked. Strange. Good. Right. You changed everything, not just the coalition. How people think about power, leadership, worth. Nina smiled. You proved that being undervalued doesn't mean being worthless. We all proved that. Together. Maybe. But you started it by refusing to accept that invisibility was your fate. Alara hugged her friend. Thank you. For being there at the beginning. For believing in me when almost no one did. Always. That's what friends do. That night, the coalition threw a celebration in Alara's honor. She stood before hundreds of wolves, pack members from dozens of territories who'd gathered to mark her transition. I don't have a grand speech, Alara said. Just gratitude. For everyone who took a chance on an outcast, who built something unprecedented, who chose cooperation over conflict, day after day, even when it was hard. She looked across the crowd, seeing faces she knew. Wolves she'd helped. Leaders she'd trained. You gave me something I'd never had. Visibility, value, home. I hope I gave you something worth having in return. The applause was deafening. Ronan stepped forward, taking her hand. You gave us more than we knew we needed, he said. A future where strength comes from unity, not dominance. Where worth is earned through contribution, not birthright. Where outcasts can become architects. He pulled her close, kissing her in front of everyone. The crowd erupted in cheers. Later, much later, after the celebration ended and the guests departed, Alara found herself back on the ridge with Ronan. So, he said, what now? Now we rest. Tomorrow we plan that trip. Alara looked at the valley one last time. But tonight, we just be. I like that plan. They stood together, two wolves who'd found each other in the chaos, watching the valley sleep peacefully below. Alara thought about the girl who'd stumbled into this territory 5 years ago, broken, desperate, invisible. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone who knew her worth, who'd built something that mattered, who'd proven that strength wasn't about dominance but resilience, someone who'd been cast out and had chosen not just to survive, but to thrive. Not despite being an outcast. Because of it. Because sometimes being pushed to the margins gave you the clearest view of what needed changing. And sometimes the wolves nobody wanted became the leaders everyone needed. Alara Vance had been invisible for most of her life. Now she was a legend. Not because she'd sought recognition, but because she'd refused to accept that being unseen meant being worthless. She'd walked into hostile territory with nothing. She'd walked out having changed the world. And standing on that ridge, hand in hand with her chosen mate, looking at the coalition she'd built and the future she'd secured, Alara finally understood something fundamental. She wasn't invisible because she was worthless. She'd been invisible because the people around her were blind. And the moment she stopped waiting for them to see her and started seeing herself, everything changed. The outcast became the architect. The forgotten became the legend. The broken became whole. And in the harsh frontier territories where strength was everything, Alara Vance proved that sometimes the strongest thing you could be was exactly yourself. Visible, valued, victorious, home.